What was the quickest buzzkill to a room full of happy people? Back when I waited tables, there was a guy walking to his table. He had a massive heart attack and hit the floor. EMTs said he was gone before he hit the ground. I've never seen a restaurant go so silent so quickly. A friend of mine was attending a Christian Pentecostal summer camp a few years ago with some high school students and other adult leaders. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Pentecostal youth camps, the evening church services can get pretty lively and charged with emotion. People being slain in the spirit, speaking in tongues, lots of worship and confessing sins. That sort of thing. There were probably a couple of hundred students, so things might have gotten chaotic. Anyway, my friend and one of the other adult leaders got pulled on stage to confess sins to the audience. Not sure who thought this was a good idea, but maybe it wasn't planned. And the other adult leader, a nice guy in his 20s, newly married, confesses to the packed auditorium of high schoolers hyped up on Jesus that he used to do the deed with his dog. The evening service pretty much ended after that. My company had a pizza party meeting for a particular department. The scuttlebutt was that it was a thank you for a third-quarter project completion. The department of 35 people were excited for the attaboys and the pizza. After the lunch, the shoe dropped. They were all being laid off because even though they finished the project on time for this long-time customer, the customer had signed a contract with another company and was leaving. Unbelievably crap move by management. With a few years under my belt now, I know that pizza seems to be a common way to give bad news to employees at other places. When I was a kid, there were about 6 to 8 families in our area who were a good group of friends. Regular holidays together, kids all close friends too, and in the same classes at school. The backstory was that one of the families kept noticing money going missing from a drawer in the master bedroom. They had an older son who was getting the blame but was denying it. Fast forward a few weeks and it's their younger kid's birthday and everyone's at their house. Usual script was the kids' party would be late afternoon, then in the evening the kids would end up playing games in the same bedroom as the adults had a few drinks. Kids were happy because we got to stay up late with all our friends, and parents got to have a few guilt-free drinks. This night was going on as normal until we were all shuffled off and home earlier than usual. We got the full story the next day. Once the kids were out of the way, the owners of the house had turned on their TV and pressed play on a video. On screen, there was CCTV of the bedroom where the money had been going missing. Clearly in the video, you could see the wife of one of the other couples sitting in that very room, going into the drawer and taking money. Apparently, they switched off the video and said, "What you saw is exactly what it looked like," and asked that couple to leave. Everyone else left shortly after. Yep, that's about time to hit the old dusty trail. Hopefully it just meant that the one group of parents were ostracized, rather than their kids also being excluded and the adult friend group fully breaking up. 800 guys in a grocery warehouse being told it was going to be automated in 5 years. One fella yelled out asking if we fought the robots and won whether we could keep our jobs. Probably not, since his job has been terminated. I was on a Chicago to New York flight. We all got on the plane but were delayed taking off due to a heavy storm going on. About 20 minutes in, everyone was still pretty calm until the pilot announces they were working on getting our baggage loaded because it's been sitting on the tarmac this entire time. The entire plane looks out, sees our luggage just sitting there in the pouring rain uncovered, and starts freaking out. The president of our company got completely plastered at our Christmas party. His speech started off funny because he was slurring hard and was playing on it. Then he started talking about how he came from nothing and became something. Then he proceeded to tell us how if it wasn't for us working so hard and keeping our clients happy, he wouldn't have been able to accomplish building his mega mansion for him and his family, nor would he have been able to afford his new Benz. There was some awkward muttering here, followed by him directing us to drink up and enjoy because due to budget cuts, the future Christmas party and bonus budget is cancelled from here on out. Many of my co-workers relied on that bonus. Nobody was impressed. Except for one person, the rest of us quit within the first few months into the new year. Sounds like the owner and MD from my spouse's last job. New cars every few months, paying his kids a salary for doing nothing, flushing cash from the business for personal home improvements. They had 100 employees tops. They all worked like dogs. Their Christmas party? Held in the office where everyone had to bring in food to share. Record profits? Huh. Thanks for the work, suckers. Check out my kid's new car. Ended up losing lots of skilled workers to a rival company. I hope he craps a hedgehog. I used to work for this new performance hall in New York City, and one morning during our morning meetings, one of our managers thought she was being unique and uplifting by ending our meeting with forcing us to say, "One thing I'm grateful to the company for is..." All 30 of us were pretty happy to just start the day since it was a beautiful day out, but that soured our mood real quick. A bunch of people got hostile with answers like, "The wonderful healthcare we're given, we have none," and "the magnificent hours. The hours are crap and inconsiderate." The whole company of more than 60 people gathered at a product unveiling and cheerleading event where we were expecting surprising news, like bonuses maybe. Instead, we were informed that the least senior and biggest jerk were promoted to partner. Everything went downhill from there. Party at this one woman's house. Everyone was talking and happy. They mention a local business burned down, and a drunk guy yells, "Must have been Jewish lightning." The entire party goes silent, awkwardly glancing between him and the hostess, who just so happens to be Jewish. The man looks around, thinks for a moment, and realizes his mistake. They didn't hear him, so he yells even louder, "Must have been Jewish lightning." I was watching Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon in a movie theater when it came out in the early 1970s. The projector died during a fight scene. Similar experience. I'd already seen Batman with Jack Nicholson as the Joker. I went again with my uncle, who wasn't much older than me, and a few of his friends. You remember that scene where the Joker, who has yet to be seen as the Joker, is talking to the crime boss who tried to have him killed? The boss, Grissom, calls Joker Jack, his real name, and Joker responds with, "Jack's dead. You can call me," steps out of the shadows for the big reveal, Joker. At Jack's dead, everyone watched the film melt onto the camera. I laughed my butt off, but everyone there who hadn't already seen the movie lost their damn minds. I actually thought I was going to witness a riot. I was on a team of about 15 people for a special project for a regional internet service provider. During the bi-weekly team meeting, the manager was super pumped about how far ahead of schedule we were due to some new processes we came up with. After about 20 minutes of attaboys, the manager concluded with telling us we were all being laid off, in the same tone of voice she used for the whole meeting, issuing a bunch of praise. Most of us awkwardly laughed for a couple of seconds thinking she was joking. She wasn't. I used to be a courier, had the same customers every day. One of the customers was an online store that had about 50 employees. The store was very successful and bought for about 8 figures by a bigger international competitor. The couple that owned the website organized a party with food and music, talked excitedly about their successes and praised themselves, only to go on and fire 90% of the employees in that company. The bride throwing up on herself and the dance floor during the first dance. She tried to hold it back, but the groom just pointed her toward the dance floor and she let her rip. It was impressive. Drinking with colleagues from work. A guy was needling me and a friend about how out of shape we were. It's fair and light-hearted, right? Suddenly my friend blurts out, "Yeah, at least we have attractive wives." The needling guy's wife was standing right there. Wow, that guy really played the reversey jackass Uno card, didn't he? And I don't really know who won this particular game. Feels like everyone lost, including the bystanders awkwardly staring literally everywhere else after that final burn went out. Bad snowstorm started about 4 a.m. a few years ago. My co-workers and I were texting each other thinking, no way they could make us come into our job today, we're non-essential workers. We're all home waiting for the email to go out regarding whether or not our boss would give us the day off. Email finally goes out around 7:30 a.m. saying that we'd have a shorter day, but everyone must show up for work by 9. So, I layered up, cleaned off my car, shoveled out my parking spot, and headed to work on very precarious roads. I got to work on time and was greeted by my co-workers, who were all pretty happy just to have not gotten into an accident on the way over. All of the clients and meetings had been cancelled, so there was a party-like atmosphere. Just as we were talking about playing charades, we get another email from the boss saying because road conditions were so bad, they were closing the agency after all and everyone had to go home. This was 20 minutes after we'd all gotten there. I've never seen more than 20 people all scream, "Are you fricking kidding me?" at the same time before. It was absurd and everyone was mad. In Portugal during the World Cup, got there early to find a street bar in the centre with a big screen. The place was soon packed. England started really well and everyone's singing and laughing. All of a sudden, the bar up the road erupts into massive cheers. Lots of people go onto the road to see. Apparently someone just dropped an entire tray of drinks? We all laugh and go back to watching the game. 10 seconds later, England scores. Our bar erupts and we spill into the street. The bar on the road is kind of silent now. That's weird. The game starts again and the bar up the road starts screaming again. Nothing in the game? What's going on? People look back up the road, can't quite work it out. Then a really bad tackle goes in and the penny finally drops. Our bar's TV is the only one using satellite and all the others have cable. So our feed is about 20 seconds behind everywhere else. Every exciting moment is audible about 20 seconds before we get to see it. I've never seen a bar empty so fast in all of my life. One day at work, we had an hour meeting followed by a planned pizza party as a reward for meeting some safety goal. They'd been telling us all week not to worry about food because they were getting pizza. Well, after the meeting, we were sitting around waiting for said pizza to get there when our boss came in and told us there was a failure of communication and no one actually ordered said pizza. If you want to see 50 factory workers go from excited to murder-ready in less than a second, that's what you tell them. I worked at a casino for a couple of years and the joke is totally true. How do you make 500 old people want to kill you? You yell bingo. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was bartending on one of our restaurant's busiest days. The place was packed and a man and boy of about 9 couldn't stop wrestling and giggling. The man, about 30 years old, started repeatedly yelling, "I'm gonna grab your wee-wee." And yeah, the whole place dropped dead silent. The mother grabs the kid and says they need to chill the F out. Every family reunion when one aunt gets drunk and brings up my other aunt who died. Happens every time. Not exactly a room, but our plane landed home after my company spent a year in Iraq. Our company commander previously told us to tell our families they shouldn't come out to the tarmac to welcome us back because it would be a fricking circus and you'll just see them later anyway. Stepping off the plane, who are the first and only people we see? Our fricking commander's wife, 3 kids, parents, grandparents, brothers, and numerous cousins and friends. That guy was the worst. Family gathering was going great until the host realized she was missing thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. She started accusing everyone of being thieves until her husband said he put it away without telling her. In grad school, we were gathered in a room to hear about how the last term of classes in the program was going to be cut due to a new law regarding educator requirements for the state. Everyone was stoked because it was going to save us like $5,000 to $8,000. Then they told us that due to state budget cuts, our total tuition was going to double. A guy decided to pop the question to his girlfriend at a work holiday party. She said no. Both parties began to cry inconsolably. All the guys in the room tried to cheer up the guy with their tales of woe. All the women in the room took the woman's side and did whatever the female version of the above was. Went from a fairly happy event to a complete disaster within minutes. Plus side was, while all of this crap was going down, nobody was hitting the buffet, so I just cleaned the frick up. I guarantee you someone else has told this story with the addendum of, and then that frickin' jerk just went to the buffet. I'm not gonna lie, I love the idea of the absolute social mayhem going on, and this one frickin' guy just hoofing it to the buffet and eating everything straight out of the dishes there, taking complete advantage of the situation and piecing out on the drama. It's glorious. When the boss got drunk at the Christmas party and then let slip that there were going to be layoffs coming in the new year. We had to work on a holiday, but management didn't, so there was nobody to unlock the building. We waited outside from 7 AM till 7:45 and were told that if we didn't get in by 8, we could go home. 7:55, our manager shows up and lets us in, telling them they're going to be let go just before Christmas. You know, Walmart is really bad about letting their seasonal people go the same week as Christmas after spending 90 days building them up as having a chance of being more than a temp. I wasn't there, but when the Metallica concert in New Delhi was cancelled, 30,000 fans were already at the venue, super excited and waiting for more than 3 hours for the concert to begin. While they were waiting the said 3+ hours, some of the security barricades at the stage gave way and couldn't be fixed. So the organizers cited safety issues and just cancelled the whole thing. I think they were eventually arrested for a breach of trust because the whole thing sounds shady, to be honest. India is not exactly a hot destination for big musicians. So when Metallica came over for the first concert in India ever, people flew in from all over the country just to attend. Metallica's pretty popular in India as well. I hear angry fans rushed the stage and broke the equipment after the cancellation was announced. Camp. 150 kids headed to an ice skating rink. Everyone's laughing, cheering, and having fun. Sitting on school buses for 2 hours. The place is closed. Instant chaos, screaming, and general unhappiness. Took us back the next day, but still the angriest I've ever seen 150 kids be. This is more of a mild story, but still very uncomfortable. It was at work during break. A whole bunch of us were outside smoking. One kid asks my coworker if he has any kids and says that he likes to dress up as Santa for the young ones. So my coworker tells him, "I have a daughter that just turned 20, and he replied with, "Well, she can definitely come and sit on my lap." The silence after that sentence was so painful. Everyone ended up going back inside after that. It was super awkward. In 2007, Mars Volta played at the White River Amphitheater. They got through about 4 songs and then quit in a rage on stage. Turns out the guitarist was having speaker issues and someone threw a bottle of wee-wee on him. He smashed his guitar on the speakers and walked off mid-song. The lead singer says, "This is what you get when you build an amphitheater on an Indian burial ground. I'll give 10 grand to anyone who brings me the head of the motherfricker who threw that crap on us." Security ran out to escort them off, and we had a full hour-and-a-half wait until RHCP came out. That crap was sour. Also, this is all available to watch on YouTube. I didn't witness it personally, but I heard about it and the aftermath. Back in 2006, an army unit was being extended beyond its original 12-month deployment to Iraq. This was the first extension of the surge and before it became common. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld traveled to the unit's home base to address the families of the soldiers and let them know why these soldiers weren't coming home, and the few that had made it home were having to turn around and go back. It wasn't a horribly happy crowd to start with, but they were willing to hear him out and be respectful. Apparently he came in incredibly conceited about the whole situation and basically made a comment along the lines of, "They're soldiers and they'll do what they're told and like it." He was completely lacking in empathy and understanding, and just expected everyone to accept and support the decision. This comment and demeanor quickly turned the crowd hostile, and the town hall was quickly cancelled and Rumsfeld had to be escorted out by his security detail. I was helping to run a Christian disco when I was a teenager back in the 80s. Everyone was happy and dancing until I innocently played Tainted Love. The entire dance floor cleared in seconds because apparently Tainted Love is a gay anthem. I'd like to know what other songs they were okay with if Tainted Love was too gay for them. It was the party for the cast of a musical I was in during my senior year. We were all having a great time and decided to watch a video of the performance that the host's mum managed to record. She had permission to record the show. In the middle of the recording, you could hear the host's mum whispering while recording it. It was obvious she wasn't aware the phone picked up her voice. She was talking about how her son deserved the leading role, not the guy who was actually cast. She was basically heckling his every move during the show. The party ended pretty quickly after that. The poor lead guy was really hurt. He wanted to go to school for theatre, but that event really discouraged him. But he got the main part, and she was clearly biased. That just makes me so sad. Another talent discouraged from following their dreams. 50th anniversary for my old rugby club. People were flying in from all around the world, 150 plus people ranging from late teens to 70s. We went on a big pub crawl combined with my dad's 60th birthday the night before the big dinner. One of the old boys fell over outside the local pub, hit his head on the concrete and was knocked out. The ambulance was called and we helped him get into it, explained what happened to the medics, and off he went with his brother to the hospital. We laughed it off and went back to drinking. By far not the first time a player has gone to hospital after a night out. The night after at the big suit and tie dinner, one of the old boys was wondering where he and his brother were, so he called the brother and asked if he was okay. He wasn't. He'd had a brain aneurysm and had little to no chance of surviving. A room full of more than 150 tough-as-nails men and women went from having the time of their life to being pretty much dead silent. He died 4 days after. I was in a local, independently run bookshop in my hometown, and it was full of people happily searching the labyrinth of books, and the owner was talking to one particular shopper about World War II history books. They seemed to be having a proper good chinwag, and it was kind of obvious that most of the other shoppers were tuned into their conversation. After all, it was a very interesting talk they were having about history. Right up until the shopper said something along the lines of, there's actually a lot of evidence to suggest that all that stuff with the Jews didn't exactly happen. The tension in the room went up so damn quick I could smell it. It felt like we were all walking underwater. Then the shop owner freaking exploded and threw the guy out the shop. We all perused the shelves in silence. I was at a really fun party which turned sour when one of the people in the room punched his pregnant girlfriend for no apparent reason. He mysteriously fell down a flight of stairs about 20 seconds later, with no witnesses to what happened. We were discussing road safety with the headmaster. One of the pupils pointed out that there had been a car crash right in front of her, just as she'd been about to step out onto the road earlier that week, which had been really scary. The headmaster laughed and asked her what she was wearing and if it had been her fault. Absolute silence for 10 seconds as he squirmed and then mumbled, "I mean, were you wearing a ball gown?" or as if that had been what it meant. Pathetic and excruciating. A 50-year-old man to a teenage girl. This story took place my freshman year of high school. I was in an extremely small 5th period theatre course with about 10 or 15 people in it. We were a very well-behaved class that acted more like a family than anything else. It was fun. However, one day we got a substitute teacher who I'll call D. D was old. She had short white hair, a permanent scowl, and always wore a jacket that looked like a duster. That particular day she was angry and you could tell. She had a difficult time with the computer playing the movie, so she was yelling, fussing, and blaming her ignorance on us. In our class we had several tech-savvy people, but she refused all help because we were too, quote, risky. Eventually she does get it to work, giving us the chance to ignore her. Around 10 minutes into the film, someone realized she hasn't said anything in a while, so they look over and see her eyes open, still and unresponsive. They turned to the rest of the class, who were still focused on the movie, and alerted them. Everyone began to freak out. People are taking flash pictures of her, waving, trying to get her to respond. Eventually, she woke up and yelled at us and then went back to sleep with her eyes open once more. It was the freakiest situation ever, but the good news is that I never saw that sub working for my school again. I was once at a disco on Hogmanay in Scotland, and the DJ played God Save the Queen instead of Flower of Scotland at midnight. He was lucky he made it out alive.
Doctors and nurses of Reddit, have you ever witnessed a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? If so, what happened? I worked labor and delivery, had a very young mother come in, accompanied by her parents. She was just 12 to 13, and parents looked stuffy and kept telling her she should have had an abortion, she was too young, etc. Her mother was silent the whole time, but leaked tears for her constantly. While she labored, I received a call from a very young boy who said he was her boyfriend. His trembly voice explained that her father wouldn't come to the hospital. I explained that I couldn't give out information, but he could talk to her afterward. I went in, told her he had called, and she showed me a picture of him. He was white, straight red hair, pimply and tiny, the runt of the litter. About an hour later, her physical ed teacher stopped by to check on her, which I thought was odd. We didn't get many teachers checking in on students. He was as opposite of the boyfriend as he could get. Tall, very muscular, beautiful smile, and rich chocolate brown skin. The girl's father accompanied her to the delivery room. Odd, but okay. The more she pushed, the louder she cried. In between, she kept saying, "Sorry, Daddy." Finally, out slid a very beautiful chocolate brown baby boy. I thought her father was going to pass the heck out on my delivery room floor. I did my usual, "It's a boy," and said nothing else. I handed him off to a nursery nurse and got Dad a chair. The new mom said, "I'm sorry, Daddy," over and over again. Her mom, now frowned up, came to see the baby, took one look, started asking God for forgiveness, and left. I sent her dad home a short bit later, admonishing him to react at home, not here. I set up a time for our counselor to meet with him before I left. After talking to new mom, she admitted her gym teacher had been giving her special treatment. I explained sex to her, and she said she'd only kissed the BFF, but had stayed after school to be with her gym teacher. I'm state mandated to report child abuse, so I did. 2 weeks later, with her world shattered, her baby was given up for adoption. I wish her the best. Of note, this was 1989. My husband and I were visiting our friends who just had a baby. We are the godparents, and we were standing in the hallway talking to both sets of grandparents. Well, apparently the hospital has a rule that only 5 visitors may be present in the hallway, but the security guard had let all 6 of us in for some reason, and we didn't realize it. This nasty nurse comes up to us, notes that there are 6 of us, tells us someone will have to leave immediately, and then turns to my husband and says, "Oh, are you the daddy?" Without missing a beat, he says, "That's what we're all trying to figure out here." She gets a look of horror on her face and backs away. Worked in the Army hospital in Fort Lewis. A woman came in for belly pain, and we found out and told her she was 10 weeks pregnant. The husband at the bedside started laughing, grabbed his coat, and left the room explaining to us that he had been in Afghanistan until 3 weeks prior. He looked back at her and just said, "Well, that's that, Brittany." I always liked how classily he left her while she just silently stared off into space. I had a vasectomy. While chatting with the doctor, he told me about another patient. This guy had 3 kids and came in for the snip-snip because he and his wife decided they were done having children. The doc opened up his sack and found nothing to snip. This guy was born without the ability to have any children. The poor doctor had to explain to him what happened. Imagine finding out that way. 23andMe posts a 25% off coupon 2 hours after this post goes up. Oh! One of my favorite cousins just did 23andMe with her dad and discovered that they were not biologically related at all. This is especially horrible because my aunt, her mother, is one of the most ridiculously zealous and judgmental people I've ever met. She screams at the baby cousins when they don't behave perfectly. She literally threw a pocket Bible at a woman in a grocery store after the woman was on the phone and said a curse word or something. And she likes to send me unsolicited long letters about God's plan for my life. Surprisingly, her husband is the most fun and laid-back person I've ever met. He did not deserve this or her. I learned about heteropaternal superfecundation from a friend of mine. She is a 5'0" blonde white girl introducing me to her 6'5" black twin. Surprises for everyone that day. Not in the hospital, but a friend and his girlfriend were on again, off again, and she got pregnant. She swears it's his. He wants a paternity test. He moves in with her and her mom. She has the baby. Take the test. Test is taking a while to come back. Him and his family are over the moon with the baby. Kind of forget about it. Mentions it to girlfriend's mom one day and she says, "Oh yeah, didn't she tell you? Came back a while ago. Totally your baby. Awesome, all is well." A few months later, they're moving out and he finds the test in a box. Not his baby. I used to work in the newborn nursery at a hospital. We got the babies right from delivery, cleaned them up, footprinted them, checked vitals, etc. Dads usually came in with the newborns. This dad comes in with this baby. Dad is white, mom is white, baby is very obviously not white. The dad was very quiet standing next to this baby, watching us clean it up. He says quietly, "I don't think this is my baby." You could tell he was absolutely devastated. We advised him not to sign the birth certificate until he was sure. Not sure what happened after we sent the baby back out to mom, but I felt awful for the guy. My best friend was dating a girl and knocked her up. They got engaged and planned to get married right after the baby was born. There were about 10 of us in the waiting room waiting for her to crank out the baby. It was essentially her parents, his were in another state, some of her friends, and some of ours. After sitting there for about 2 hours, he walks out with a smirk on his face and says, "Let's go." We all thought something horrible had happened. Her friends asked how the baby is, and he said, "Fine, but black." He motioned for us to go, so we followed him. In the parking garage, he tells us to follow him to his apartment, then sends me a text asking I could put him up for a while. We literally moved him out of his apartment and into my spare bedroom in like an hour tops. Her parents didn't know who to be mad at. The confusion on their faces when he told them the baby was black was priceless. I was blood typing a newborn once. Mom was an O positive, baby was AB positive, which is more or less not possible. I immediately panicked because Jesus God, they mixed up the babies. Someone has the wrong baby. We're gonna get sued. We're gonna have to genetic test the entire nursery. What if they subpoena me for being the idiot who discovered the problem? I don't have insurance. What if they sue me? After repeating the test 3 times, I called the floor and told them that they'd either drawn the wrong baby's blood or they'd switched the babies because mom couldn't be the baby's mother. No, it was a donor egg. The redraw matched fine. Everyone was where they were supposed to be. Oh God, my heart though. I work in anesthesia. One of my colleagues had someone vaginally deliver a baby with Steve's lunchbox tattooed above the birth canal. The OBGYN said to the father after the delivery, "Congratulations, Steve." The guy replied that his name was indeed not Steve. Don't know if that counts. My wife is an RN/hospital supervisor. Code yellow is the code over the intercom for security or large male nurses needed. It rarely ever happens, but every now and then over the speakers you hear a "code yellow, labor and delivery." You know the reason. I used to work with a guy whose wife was pregnant. Near time for delivery, everyone at her place of business had a big party with gifts, money, etc. So, big day comes, water breaks, they get in car to go to hospital. She breaks the news on the way there that it's not his, the kid is into the race, and if he could just drop her off at the hospital and then leave, that would be great. He took a few days off work, found a new apartment, moved out, filed divorce, etc. He called into work and told someone what happened. News spread pretty fast. All congratulations cards, etc. were cleaned up and thrown away. Everyone was very sensitive to his pain. Except, somehow, I don't know how, I did not get the news. So on his first day back, I walked into the office he shared with 6 other guys and said, Hey, Daddy-O, how's fatherhood so far? Getting any sleep? Got some pictures? Let's see the little tyke." He slowly lifted his head to look at me with a painful look. The room was dead silent. One of his workmates stood up, grabbed my arm, and walked me out of the room, shushing me. "What happened?" I asked. "Did it die? What's the problem?" When he told me, I about died myself. I still feel bad for the dude, and it's been 30 years. "Sorry, can we just talk about the fact that she said, by the way, this kid is not yours, and if you could just drop me off at the hospital and then leave, that'd be great. Like, you can't just drop that on someone like that." I worked with this guy a few years back. Him and his wife were pregnant. They were super excited and shared the news with everyone and put stuff all over social media. So fast forward a few months and the kid is unfortunately stillborn. They had a professional photographer come to the hospital and they did a series of photos, holding the baby, dressing it up, kissing it on the head, usual newborn photos. The bizarre thing is they put them all on Facebook. I found it kind of morbid, but whatever. I've never lost a kid, so that's cool. One day at work, a guy from a different branch comes into the store and congratulates my coworker, slaps him on the back and says all this stereotypical new dad small talk BS. My coworker informs him the baby was born dead. The other guy refuses to believe it and keeps saying, "F you, man, quit messing with me. I saw the pictures on Facebook." They go back and forth and the guy finally realizes he's not being messed with. This was the most uncomfortable exchange I've ever seen between two humans. I'm not a nurse. My professor was a labor and delivery nurse, and she once saw a man running between two delivery rooms. Both women he had impregnated went into labor and gave birth the same day. Supposedly, the one he was married to was angry because the woman he cheated with was impregnated after the wife, but had her kid 10 minutes before the wife. Labor and delivery is apparently the most drama-filled section of hospitals. My significant other is planning to be a nurse, and he's going to work in labor and delivery neonatal this year, and I'm excited to hear any dramatic stories. My grandmother was a nurse. Once she was assisting with delivering a baby, and the ostensible father commented that the child looked good for a premature baby. Without thinking, my grandmother told the truth. That baby is not premature. So I guess I know where I get my social obliviousness from. A coworker's aunt just found out her dad wasn't actually her dad. So she was really big into genealogy and had mapped out her family tree as far as she could go. She took one of those ancestry DNA tests about 2 months ago, and her father's side didn't line up with what she was expecting. In fact, she didn't recognize a single name that she was matched with paternally. She casually asked her dad if he knew any of the names, and he recognized the surname of the maintenance man at the apartment complex where he and his wife, Aunt's mom, lived shortly after they had gotten married, claimed he was a lousy repairman who always flirted with his wife, etc. Aunt's mom had passed away a few years ago, so she decided to not tell her dad the news. Had a lesbian couple come in. One of them was pregnant, neither knew. Judging from all the screaming, this information was poorly received. My brother was doing his OBGYN rotation. His story is that in the first birth he assisted, the woman had her husband leave the room. Seems odd these days, but he had the husband step out for the comfort of the patient. The baby is delivered and the color was not even close. Lily white parents and very black baby. She wants him to stay to talk to her husband who is about to come back and he bails on the whole situation. She was playing the odds all the way to the end. Had a college buddy whose fiancée was pregnant. They were the perfect couple. Both had just over a year with great careers starting out. Everything was butterflies and rainbows. Fast forward to the delivery room. They're in there and out comes a very black baby. He's quite the pale redhead, and she's a blonde, blue-eyed Texas girl. He made sure everyone was okay, waited for her parents to arrive, and left without saying a word. He moved all of his stuff out of the house while she was in the hospital and cut off all communications with her, just walked out of their lives in the most stone-cold act I'd ever seen. They were together for 9 years, and he just left cold turkey. She tried to contact him at his job a few times, but he quickly moved up the ladder and eventually got a job in another city. He told me once that he took solace in the fact that her family had already dropped about $10,000 in a wedding that never happened. My son came out and looked really tan. My ex-girlfriend and I are pretty white. I thought for a second she cheated on me. We are now separated for different reasons unrelated to her child, and he is pasty white as hell. Got one heck of a suntan in the uterus, though. Not a doctor, but a distant cousin of mine definitely has children that don't belong to the father. My cousin was adopted as an infant and was essentially a crack baby. She struggled with some developmental issues and has a low IQ compared to most, but she can still live on her own with little to no issues. She, a white woman, married a Latino guy, really dark brown skin, several years ago, and they had a son together who was dark hair, dark skin, and dark eyes. He is easily identified as their son. The real trouble happens years later. Her husband, who we'll call Javier, has some IQ issues of his own. Just a little slow when it comes to tasks and reasoning. Anyway, Javier is in the military and gets deployed internationally for about 6 months. When he comes home, his wife is 4 months pregnant. You do the math. He still believes the baby is his own, even after it's born with pale skin and blonde hair and blue eyes. If that wasn't bad enough, it happens again 2 years later with another baby. Same blonde hair and blue eyes. Everyone knows she slept with a different man. It was actually her high school boyfriend, but Javier still thinks the children are his. It's kind of sad, but at this point, there's not much you can do. He has raised the kids as his own. I'm a nurse, but this didn't happen to me. A friend of mine got pregnant in high school. She claimed it was our local doctor's son's kid, so he agreed to deliver his grandchild for free. Child delivered, and it was obviously half African American. Doctor's son and girl were both white. I think he still delivered it for free as he was relieved his 14-year-old son wasn't a dad. I'm too young to have witnessed it, but back in the late 50s or 1960, my uncle had an affair with a woman who later divorced her husband and became his wife. She had 2 children with her first husband, or at least that was the official story that everyone maintained. However, it was extremely obvious, based on appearance, that the second of my aunt's 2 children while married to her first husband was my uncle's biological child. She looked nothing like my aunt's first husband or her older half-brother, and exactly like my uncle. As the years went by, the pretense was dropped and was never mentioned again. Both my sons came out with barrel chests, red hair, and huge hands and feet, so they look exactly like me. My wife looks at them all loopy on drugs and says, "That's not my kid!" The whole room went silent for a minute, and then we bust out laughing. My wife has a wicked sense of humor. My sister got pregnant in high school and later met her now husband when she was 5 months pregnant. She is white and boyfriend is black. The baby daddy was white and not present. I was with our entire family, including my now brother-in-law, visiting the baby. My sister was still in recovery from her C-section. Brother-in-law picks up my niece. The nurse looks at him and says, "She should darken up in a few days." We all had a laugh. We knew he wasn't the father, but she didn't. I always wondered if she felt bad or assumed adultery. They have 2 more girls together and he was able to adopt 3 years later. Kinda happened to my mom. My biological father is Greek with very pale skin and my mom is a white Western European mutt. When I was born, I had very dark skin and a head full of thick black hair. He didn't seem concerned, but his mother freaked out, called my mother and grandmother not so nice names and left. My father ended up splitting on us when I was about 3 weeks old with no explanation. A couple months later, my skin lightened, all of my black hair fell. Turns out he was the father. We've never tried to reach back out to his family because in that first year of my life, they went through a lot of drama, including arrests, rehab stays, drive-by shootings, an affair followed by a divorce, another baby mama my mother didn't know about, the list goes on. My father and I tried to form a relationship when I was in high school. It went okay at first, and then it got weird very quickly. He insisted I called him Dad, insisted on regular visitation, routinely showed up at my friends' and boyfriends' houses causing a scene, insisted I get family pictures with his new lady and his 5 other kids. None of us had the same mother, and this is not including the baby he had and ditched before we got together with my mom. I regret ever trying at all. He and his family were and still are trashy hot messes, and I'm glad my family decided to keep me away from them. Cherry on top, he was working for my now husband's parents when my husband and I first met. Once his parents found out who he was and what had happened, they fired him so I would never have to run into him at their business. He had it coming anyway, so they were glad to finally stop making excuses for him and let him go. I was doing epidurals in residency. This Caucasian couple was a more rural part of the country, and they don't look or sound particularly educated. Anyhow, wife is particularly antsy, asking when she can go home even though the baby isn't out yet. Husband looks bored and uninterested, like he's been there a whole bunch of times. I usually don't stay in the rooms during delivery, but this one I just happened to be nearby to give more in the epidural because of a tear immediately after delivery. Anyhow, when I got to the room, the wife is holding her eyes shut and doesn't want to see the baby. I look at the baby and he's obviously black. Now the husband is paying attention and he sees what I do. He keeps repeating, "When that baby gonna pink up?" louder and louder. The OB tries to diffuse things by reminding everyone that this moment is critical and suggests the baby should be taken to the resuscitation area in the NICU and that the father should step out while the OB repaired the laceration. We called the social worker and security and I was called elsewhere, so I don't know what happened afterwards, so I can't imagine it was good. I worked as a lab tech before I became a nurse. We had a set of twins in the NICU that were super early and the mom was still in the OR getting sewed up from the cesarean. I was drawing baby B's blood when mom was wheeled over to baby A's isolette. She was crying and said, "Oh, thank God you're not black. I have been so worried the last 7 months." So newborn babies, especially when they're born early, are very pink, almost red. So even if the baby was part black, their skin isn't necessarily dark yet. But looking at these babies, it was obvious they were going to be black. The shape of the face, the texture of the hair, and baby B that I was working on had an intense Mongolian spot. A few weeks later, my NICU nurse friend told me that the babies were now on a no info status, meaning security alert, can't give anyone information about them, can't refer them by name, etc. She said there was a huge fight because the mom's husband, white guy, obviously noticed that the babies were half black and that the mom cheated on him and got pregnant. The real dad, black guy, came in and didn't realize the mom was even married. These poor babies. I had a test done on my son when he was about 7 months old. Baby mama constantly told me he wasn't mine, but then came after me for child support. Got the test done and he was mine. So I hired a lawyer and we sat and chilled. 4 months later, she's arrested on charges of distribution of meth where my son lived, and he's been with me for the last 8 years. Now she pays me child support. Edit. I was remembering events wrong here. I got my kid when he was 11 months old after the Department of Homeland Security did a random stop drug test on her and she failed for meth. I then started a 2-year battle in juvenile court to not allow the state to reunify with the mother. I finally got juvenile court to release my case to district court, where we fought for actual custody. During our district court battle, she took my son for a visit, and I got a call from the cops in a city an hour away that she had been arrested on a domestic with her boyfriend at a hotel, and they searched her and found needles and meth paraphernalia. That was the last time she had him unsupervised. We went about 2 years of her barely calling, seeing him once a month for 10 to 20 minutes, until she finally got arrested on attempt to distribute meth charges. She got out on bail and was arrested for it again 3 weeks later. She spent 3 years in state prison and has been out about 8 months now. She appears to be clean and just gave me $100 for extra child support yesterday. She's only court appointed to pay $52 a month. So we're giving her a shot, but she is still and will remain on supervised visits for a long time. The whole fiasco has been such a blur, it's hard to remember exactly when, what, where happened, especially after 4 to 5 years of really not having to deal with her. At the time, it was utter crap though. She punched me a couple times, lied under oath, sent me threats, inappropriate photos of her with other men, the list goes on and on. I've really tried to put a lot of it behind me and forget about as much of it as I can to try and help me forgive her so she can at least be somewhat a part of my kid's life, because that's what he wants. I just watch her like a hawk now. I had the opposite happen, sort of. My wife and I are both brown-skinned, dark-haired, half Mexicans, and our moms are both 100% white blondes with blue and green eyes. So we sort of knew it was a crapshoot with our baby, but the nurse who was assisting with delivery had no idea. At one point, she gets sort of nervous and calls for help, and another, I guess, more senior nurse came in and nodded and came over to talk to me. I thought there was something wrong with the baby as she comes over and stumbles through some questions. So I was father and no one else was coming, etc. Then finally, she awkwardly asks if either of us happened to be blonde growing up. I said, yeah, I was. And both the baby's grandparents are blonde as they come, and this wave of relief went over her as she brought me over to see this blonde-as-heck crowning baby head. It's funny because he looks just like me if you applied a Gringo Instagram filter. We often get awkward questions about his heritage, and my wife always hits them with, yeah, we're not sure if he's mine. It's always funny to see people nod for a moment and then go, wait, what? Not a medical professional, but I know of a related court case that made it to the state's highest court. Black guy and white woman are married. She is a former prostitute, and at some point they separate. He moves out of state, she moves out of state, and she goes back to prostituting. Guy gets a phone call around 9 months later from a friend or relative of his ex, saying that his ex is pregnant and ready to give birth any day now. Guy drives across the country so he could be there for the delivery. Baby comes out and is white, has blue eyes, and red hair. Mom says it must be a Trix baby. Seeing as the guy is black, he understandably pieces out. Later on, the mom's parental rights are terminated. As you can imagine from the prostituting, she was not a fit mother, and the state went about trying to find the dad to be notified before the kid could be adopted. Since the dude was still her husband at the time the child was born, legally he was the presumptive father. The state does genetic testing, and twist, turns out he is the father. For an extra kick in the pants, the state ends up terminating his parental rights for abandonment. Not a happy ending.
What made the popular kid at the school the unpopular kid? My partner likes to tell the story of how she became the unpopular kid at school. She was about 6 or 7, so primary 2 here in the UK, and a trend kicked off in her class of eating dog biscuits. All of the kids were stealing dog biscuits from home and eating them at break time. Unfortunately, she didn't have a dog and just had to eat normal human biscuits at school. She was ostracized every break time for it. Peer pressure is weird sometimes. He thought it would be cool to bring a loaded BB gun to the school and got the cops called on him by another student. One of the kids at the school lived with his grandma because his parents died. Peepyhead and a group of his mates started harassing the old lady whenever she came to pick him up. Principal was reported this, and they ended up getting expelled altogether. I don't know if they could be considered kids at the school anymore, but I approve nonetheless. She made fun of a girl with cancer, made a joke like, "Why don't you ask your mum to buy you a wig? I can see your scalp." And overnight, she was the least liked person in the school, and 100% deserved it. He recorded himself shoving carrots, cucumbers, and a bottle of hot sauce up his caboose in the back of a van. Then someone found the video and shared it with the whole school. A popular guy in my year peed himself during an exam in our gym hall. Unfortunately for him, the biggest butthole in our year was sitting directly behind him. He immediately stood up and yelled, "He peed himself!" He proceeded to get teary-eyed and say, "It's my energy drink, it's spilled," over and over before the exam supervisor literally dragged him out of the hall. 2 weeks later, he returned to the school the unpopular kid, and kept a low profile for a while until it eventually died down and he climbed the social ranks once more. That is until an episode of The In-Betweeners, a popular TV show in the UK, aired in which one of the main characters goes poopy on himself in the exam hall, and it reminded everyone of what happened, effectively nuking his popularity all over again. A guy at my school got drunk at a party, got naked and inserted his member into a Jim Beam bottle and ran around all crazy-like with it attached, but not having to use his hands. At the time, it was quite a laugh, but it wasn't until a day or so later people thought about how small the opening was to a Jim Beam bottle. So that was basically the end of him. There was one kid in my class who was the son of our maths teacher. He was crazy popular because he was able to help everyone out with their homework for that class. Turns out he was actually snooping through his dad's notes to get the answers. The teacher naturally got super suspicious after a while, so he deliberately made a fake answer sheet. Of course, the kid grabbed it and noted it all down. It was full of wrong answers, so blatant that anyone who even slightly paid attention in class would know they were way off base. The kid handed out the answers anyway, and in an instant made about half the class bomb, and his popularity dropped like a rock as they all accused him of deliberately making them fail. They moved him to another class, and they never had an incident of cheating again. I remember a guy at my school kept on asking to use the restroom, and the teacher kept refusing. Eventually, he went up to a trash can, dropped trow, and took a dump. This was middle school, but nevertheless, folks remember it to this day. And I don't know whether this young gentleman is disgusting or a legend. In elementary school, so popularity was already sort of a nebulous concept, but one boy got pantsed at recess and was found to be wearing diapers. Pretty sure he was incontinent, which has got to be a rough flipping road for a little kid, especially since he didn't seem to have any other noticeable disabilities. Oh wow, this blew up. If I remember, I'll add in the whole little saga of this incident when I get off work. At least the stuff I can remember. So this was in the late 90s, maybe 98 or 99. We were in 2nd grade? This kid, we'll just call him Timmy, was pretty well liked. He was a nice kid, got along with everyone pretty well. For whatever reason, the boys of my class were comparing undies on the playground like, "Oh, I got Scooby-Doo," or "I got spaceships," or whatever. Why? Couldn't tell you. Little kids are flipping weird. So, Timmy was the holdout of the group, wouldn't tug down his pants to show what prints he had. He got accused of having girly underwear, and one thing led to another, culminating in a couple of boys grabbing him and pulling down his pants. Timmy didn't have girly undies, he had on a big old diaper. In hindsight, it made a lot of things make sense. He had carte blanche to leave class to the nurse, he wore baggy pants, and every once in a while the classroom stank something fierce. He got teased pretty badly that day and for a while afterward, though people eventually mellowed out about it once it was no longer the new thing. The story doesn't end there, though. This was one of the biggest moments in my life that I understood what empathy was. One of my biggest childhood nightmares got presented right in front of me. I was a bedwetter, from the ages of 3 to around 13, and not just occasionally, but like every single night. So for most of that time, I had to wear something similar every night. I was terrified that someone would find out and my life would be over. I was already a little socially outcast because I was an odd kid, which only magnified my fears. To my shame, I made fun of Timmy that day, and several days after. I'd call him names, or tug on his waistband, or whatever. It wasn't until I mentioned to my mum about him that I got an earful and a reminder that I had to wear the same thing at night. That stuck with me, and not much later than that, I apologized to him, and instead tried to befriend him. I didn't have a lot of friends, and he had lost a lot of his. Funnily enough, I guess, 7-year-olds don't have a strong sense of loyalty. We were pretty good friends throughout elementary school. I told him my own secret to make him feel better, and I think it did. Though I'm sure he was pretty annoyed since I was such a Dick Cheney about it at first. He was the only friend I felt comfortable with having sleepovers, due to our collective shame. He moved away the first year of middle school, which was a bummer, and we didn't really reconnect at all until early high school where we talked online. He never told me the exact reason he had to wear them, or if he did, I don't remember, but it really seemed like he just couldn't control his bladder or bowels at all. So maybe he was incontinent due to a nerve injury or something. I don't know. But that's pretty much the gist of it. It seriously impacted his social life, but things certainly got better as people moved on. If anyone has any questions, I could try to answer, but I think I laid out as much as I could remember of something from over 20 years ago. Having a set of keys given to him by the school, WTF, I know, because he was one of the really popular kids then, using those keys to break into the school and stealing 30,000 Australian dollar dues of woodworking and metalworking tools. To be fair, the school got what was coming by giving keys to a student. He punched the autistic kid, then proceeded to get jumped by every single guy that saw him in school for the next week, until his parents had him switch schools. Honestly, that's a level of moral integrity that I wouldn't have expected in the schools of my youth. He didn't get a Sega Dreamcast, but I did, so I became the popular kid. I was relatively popular. I was in JV basketball, marching band, mathletes, and track, and pretty much made friends with everyone, until my best friend at the time claimed I pushed her down the stairs and caused her to have surgery on both legs. Thing is, I was at my grandmother's funeral in another state for the entire week she claimed it happened. While the teachers kept us apart and understood my side, none of the others really believed me, except the anime club. They believed me. Go weebs. Only the anime club believes in top 10 anime betrayals in real life. When he was caught taking upskirt photos of girls in school and sending them to his friends, his popularity went from hero to zero in a split second. I think between 9th and 10th grade, he was found alone in his car behind the local arcade, beating off. He was called Thumper from that day forward. No idea what happened after graduation, but he has to have some bad memories of those years. When she made fun of me in front of everyone for wearing a yellow shirt to school. It was just a plain yellow shirt and she somehow found a way to mock the color. It was so unnecessary and made her look like someone who was just rude for no reason. Everyone quickly realized that she thought people were automatically on her side because she was somewhat rich, and she just became a joke after that. The unspeakable act. He was at a graduation party that I had the misfortune to attend, and his ex, who was also there, was asleep on the couch. He took her upstairs to get her away from all the noise. 5 minutes later, we hear a scream and a, "Get off me!" She comes running downstairs, frantically pulling up her pants, and runs out. She told us what happened after a few days. The guy heard and tried to break into her house. He's in prison for assault and battery. He gave her a black eye while he was upstairs. The unspeakable act, and breaking and entering. She's in therapy, and we are housemates now in college because she goes out with the girl I'm sharing the house with. He apparently did the deed with his dog. Even if it didn't happen, this pretty much flipped his social standing. I went to an all-girls school and there was an all-boys school about 5 minutes walk away. When I was in my final year, the school vice captain of the boys' school was dating one of our grade leaders. Both being 17 and not very smart, she eventually got pregnant. She dropped out and pretty much everyone who knew him at our school hated him. Prior to that, he was very well liked. I thought it was a bit ridiculous, honestly. Pretty sure it takes two to tango. He wore a t-shirt that said, "If you go to Brown University, you're a chump." Unfortunately, many people in the school had plans to go to Brown University, and they shunned him. Whoops, my mistake. The t-shirt wasn't what made him unpopular. It's because he was convicted of statutory, unspeakable act. The guy at my table would play the "no one likes me, I'm the center of attention now" card, as in he would fake sadness for attention, redirecting conversation, and drawing the energy from a room. Like the kid who won't be friends with you anymore because you wore the same color shirt. He was quite wealthy too, and would rub it in your face. Here's the thing. These people exist at all ages of life, so you have that to look forward to. There was a girl who was liked by everyone. Smart, happy to help anyone struggling in class, and was generally a nice person. But her uncle scammed a lot of people in her community, including parents of kids that went to our school. She went from being well-liked to being bullied, till she dropped out of school. He got into legal trouble because he and his team embezzled/misused $250,000 from the student union. The university kicked him out, stopping paying the annual $2 million to the student union, withhold funds, although that was later overruled by the courts, and revoked the privileges granted to the student union. Earlier this year, they stated that they and students are no affiliation to the student union after 1 year of negotiations. His team was still running the student union because they were re-elected. They brought votes by offering pancakes, waffles, and donuts for those who vote for their party, and had street volunteers that would pressure students to vote for the party. The scandal was revealed by a student party called the Rhino Party back in December 2018. January and February, heads started rolling, and law and accounting firms started getting involved to figure out how much was spent. It was rumored the figure was anywhere from $100,000 to $900,000. Ontario provincial lawmakers passed the law in the summer of 2018. Starting fall 2019, I had the choice of whether I wanted to pay auxiliary fees to support the student newspaper, NGOs that operated in the school, support the student union, etc. That provincial law was recently overturned by the courts this year, so starting next fall, I am forced to pay fees associated with groups that I don't support. He went from being popular to being a school meme. There's actually a lot of bank statements available that showcase what they brought. There was a really pretty girl that was quite popular in my high school. She was a bit snobby to people and sort of rude. I recall one time she threw a textbook at my groin because I was leaning back in my desk and thought it was funny. I guess it kinda was, thinking back. She also liked to make fun of the fact that I was Mexican on more than one occasion. Anyways, she gained significant weight our junior/senior year in high school, and I guess a lot of the popular kids decided to disown her for it. I never actually heard anything, but I recall her sitting all alone at lunch one day. Not my best moment, but I walked by her, pointed, and plainly said, "You earned this." He did the deed with his friend's mum at a party. Let's call popular kid A and his friend B. B's mum was arrested, as she should have been, and B faced torment from basically everyone that knew what happened. Kid A continued to brag about his actions. Eventually, people gained sympathy for B, and Kid A lost his popularity real fast. The pastiest white girl at my school was recorded saying the N-word, trading a Charizard for a Rattata. He Tindered next to his girlfriend, who everyone liked, told everyone how he would dump her, etc. When I was in primary school, the popular kid thought it would be funny to flush the class pet, a hamster called Nibbles, down the toilet. All the kids thought the hamster would have died. He quickly became known as the kid who killed the hamster. He ended up changing schools for another reason. By the way, the hamster survived. I don't know how pipes worked, but I heard the caretaker eventually found him. The school still gave Nibbles away after that. If you're wondering about the kid, he had bad ADHD or something, like he was transferred to a school that specialized in kids with behavioral problems. He has a stable job as a bookmaker, but that's all I know about him. Also, although we were told Nibbles survived, we never saw him again. All we know is that he was given away to a random family. There is a possibility the teacher made that up, as another Redditor pointed out, and Nibbles actually did perish, and they just didn't want to upset us. A girl in my school had fun times with herself with a Kit Kat bar in the dining hall, and then ate it. The stories you read in this job. Oh well, back to it. Not exactly popular, more like king of the buttholes, but he had a project in mind. Bully the newcomer to get some fresh fame for his butt apostles. The target, a Greek exchange student, nice guy but quite a meaty boy, 150 plus kilos, and a wrestler. I watched. No effing way I was getting caught in the middle of a flying fist tornado. And my regret as of today is the lack of camera smartphones back then. Bully C-word got his jaw broken and lost 5 frontal teeth, dislocated his shoulder, and got 3 fractured ribs. Legally speaking, he only defended himself and also played his defense on his weight, blaming the bully of making him lose his balance and by doing so, fell on him. It's not entirely false. Bully C-word got back 2 months later, still suffering from his injuries, shunned by his previous peers, stayed about 2 weeks and then never came back. She got pregnant at 17, and the father could have been one of 2 guys, both of whom were boyfriends of her close friends, and neither of whom wanted anything more to do with her. My school actually had a really good sex education, and we knew about contraception from the age of 11. Plus, this was the UK where contraception is free and easy to get, so she couldn't blame ignorance or a lack of resources. She tried for the Woe is Me Act, and nobody wanted to be around her anymore. Since a lot of people are talking about double standards, I'll add that both potential fathers were also ostracized after that. They'd cheated on their girlfriends, both of whom were well-liked, and had been stupid enough to not even use contraception when they also couldn't plead ignorance or lack of access. As for the girl in question, she wasn't ostracized for doing the deed or for getting pregnant, really. The primary reason was that she had slept with her close friends' boyfriends, and again, not even used protection. Plus, when she went around looking for sympathy afterwards rather than just accepting she'd done something wrong, that made it so much worse. She tried to claim it was all her friends' fault for being bad girlfriends, and if they weren't, their boyfriends wouldn't have been interested in her. He didn't exactly become unpopular, but my high school's star quarterback recorded a video of himself putting his digits in his butt, and he sent it to a girl in a neighboring school district. The video got passed around and made its way back into our school, and he got socially vibe-checked. But he didn't really lose his popularity, it was just sort of lessened, and he actually became a way better person after the fact. He still never learned that you can't throw bullets when playing indoor football in gym class against non-footballers, though. Threw a hockey stick into the special needs kid's eye socket. He claimed it was accidental only, but was caught bragging about it on his Snapchat story. He then said, his words, not mine, "He doesn't have any hope though, so what does it matter?" The kids needed surgery that his parents had to pay for, as it was cosmetic. The kid moved to a cheaper school a week later. Stopped coming to school. Didn't even do her exams in the end. Just sat at home and smoked Mary J all the time. Didn't even work. She just got boyfriends who would pay for everything for her. Became spiritual. Got the Hindu symbol, Om, tattooed on her finger. Got dreadlocks, etc. Posted weird photos on her Instagram. It's hard to explain, but she just became sort of weird. I once heard her talking to a bunch of 13-year-olds about how her boyfriend just got out of prison. She also always spoke about wanting to have a baby. This Mary J smoking, non-working, 18-year-old girl wanted a child. In the end, nobody in my school even spoke to her anymore. Even her friends didn't like her much because she was sort of a B-word. She was popular because she was super pretty and smart. It was sad. She obviously had no direction in her life. Her only qualifications are the exams we did when we were 15. Her brother and sister were still in the school. They were basically really nice and the opposite of her. I hope they do well. People found out he was killing animals in super effed up ways. Held a dog underwater until it drowned, ran over a cat with a lawnmower, used baseball bats and machetes. Dude was doing some serial killer level stuff. Now he's in the army. Oh boy, do I feel protected. Got really into astrology, Gemini, Virgo, Cancer, kept on hitting, assaulting people with a metal bottle and was in general just a butthole that only like 7 people tolerated. I follow her on Instagram and all her stories are memes about astrology. It's the Instagram equivalent of Facebook Minion memes. He kept trying to convert everyone to veganism, believing everything he heard from biased studies because they weren't funded by the government to protect the meat industry. Even though there is a lot more money in producing vegetarian and vegan foods. I mean, he said that milk causes calcium deficiency and autism. Pretty cool guy, into a few different hobbies, and was very friendly. Too friendly. Me and my friends noticed this and dropped him because he wouldn't stop trying to be physical with us. His excuse was, "I'm bisexual," but that gives him no right to touch me. Eventually, he cheated on his girlfriend of several years with the school tramp, recorded himself doing the deed with her, and showed his friends. Within a day, the entire school hated him, and he dropped out, or transferred. Nobody knows, nobody cares, but I know a lot of people that would love to throw hands for what he did. His ex that he cheated on was insanely heartbroken, and led to a very depressing and sad part of her life. But she has gotten better since, as far as I know. Teachers. What's the worst parent-teacher conference you've ever had? I had a student fail my class and I thought I'd been emailing with their parents throughout the semester. Turns out the parents didn't speak English and relied on their children to translate for them. Their older sibling was studying abroad, so the student was able to hide everything from the parents. Once they came home, the jig was up. The parents couldn't believe their child had lied for months, so we had a face-to-face meeting. It was so awful to see their faces crumble in shame and humiliation as their oldest child translated the meeting. I teach 7th grade, and the one that stands out to me was from my 2nd year in the classroom. Probably it sticks out in my mind because I didn't feel confident in my job yet, so this interaction I had with the family threw me for a loop. Once, I had a struggling student come in with their family, and I was so eager to talk to this family. I was hoping that we could have some kind of constructive conversation that would lead to the kid's improvement in my class. I'd pulled up their grades to explain why he had a D in my class and what he needed to work on to bring his grade up. Next thing I knew, parents started completely berating the kid, calling him stupid and lazy and telling him that he was a failure. It was horrible. Even worse, the kid was on the spectrum, so he really didn't have the kind of emotional stability to handle something like that. Heck, I don't know what 7th grader would be able to handle something like that. He started crying and his parents apologized to me, and led him out into the hallway where they continued to berate him. It was rough. I tried to smooth some things over by talking about the kid's strengths, but they just wouldn't be deterred. The kid was sitting on the ground in the hallway, just sobbing next to the lockers, and his parents left, presumably to go to conferences with more teachers. I tried to console the student, but I don't think there was much I could have done. He was just completely heartbroken. I had to tell a well-known gang leader that his son was failing my class. It actually went better than expected, but the anticipation was real. I was talking to the parent of a kindergarten student and telling her ways that she could help her child at home. She suddenly said, "Do you get paid to do this?" I said, yeah. And she said, "Well, I don't." Then she swiped all the papers off the table, stood up and walked out. I was like, okay then. My best friend's mum was told by her kindergarten or reception teacher in the UK to stop helping or encouraging her to read as she was making the other kids look bad, when in fact it was the teacher being a bit crap. She changed schools not long after. Why on earth an educator feels the need to stop a child from learning and excelling is a question that will never not boggle my mind. Not quite a parent-teacher conference, but it was after I got my first cell flip phone long ago when they were just coming out. An 8th grader stole it. My wife called the phone and the guy who answered was dumb enough to give her his name. It was a parent who was using it. The kid confesses to taking it and the parents came in. Admin confronted the parents about it, explaining that we just wanted the phone back. The parents tore into the kid for confessing he took the phone and told him his birthday was cancelled for ratting on them. I've had similar to this. Lady at my work, her phone goes missing. She then, months later, does a home visit to a family and sees her phone on the table. She picks it up and her photos are still on there. She says to the mum, "This is my phone." And mum says, "Oh my god, sorry, if I'd known it was yours, I would have made him give it back." How the frick does your 8-year-old just come home with a stolen phone and you're cool with it unless it's been swiped off someone you like? I did like the kid though, just couldn't trust him. My mother-in-law is a teacher. She had one child who basically existed to make sure my mother-in-law wouldn't be able to get through her day peacefully. Crawling on the ground all day, continuously talking, just generally distracting other kids and being uncontrollable. Mother-in-law had several talks with the kids' parents, but they obviously couldn't give a single crap. One day she lost her phone that she always kept on top of her desk. She spent hours looking for it when it occurred to her that the kid had been unusually quiet toward the end of the day. She asked my father-in-law to call her and of course the kid picks it up. My mother-in-law was furious and called the girl's parents. Her parents said that the kid had claimed that mother-in-law had let her have it for good behavior. It was all really stupid. Parent was irate because I caught her 6th grader cheating on a test. The parents said that the daughter was too stupid to cheat anyway and kept calling her dumb and an idiot. The daughter was right next to her, hearing her mother talk all this negative crap about her. Absolutely broke my heart. In tears, I told my principal. She said, "Well, there's nothing you can do about it, and if she really believes that, she's doing an incredible disservice to her daughter." I left the school the end of that year. An unintended conference when an undergrad I was teaching requested a formal meeting with me, her mother, and the dean of the college at the university. She'd received a 97% on an essay and she and her mother were both in tears, demanding that I be reprimanded and retrained for unfair grading policies. I think my mouth was agape the entire time. One time, a child peed all over the bathroom in the school. When we brought it up with a parent, they demanded to know why we didn't teach them how to properly use the bathroom. My girlfriend's mum is a teacher in a very poor, mostly racial minority area. She once had a child in 3rd grade who was on the cusp of being tested for special needs, but basically was approached as being slow but no serious biological developmental issues. This child, on one disgusting occasion, ate his own feces. Yes, ingested, on purpose, his own excrement. When brought up to the mother, the response was, "Well, he was hungry." An administrator in the room responded, "Then send him home with some crackers." Ugh, the horror. Once had a phone conference with a parent who accused me of forcing students to come to my house and build a garage for me. The parent said his son was being ostracized and punished by me for refusing to come to my house and work on my garage. The only thing I could do was laugh at him. I thought it was a prank and hung up on him. Next morning, I had to meet with my principal because the parent had called and threatened to call the local news media about my classroom if I wasn't immediately fired. The parent left screaming rants on my principal's voicemail. We listened to it a few times and got some good laughs. The parent claimed I was making the kid drive to my house during class, and if they didn't, I was failing them. But his son had an A- in the class, and the drive to my house was longer than the class period. The parent was obviously nuts, but it had to be treated as credible. So there was an investigation, and there may even be a report about it in my personal file. I've had other weird interactions with parents, but that one definitely takes the cake. Most parents are awesome and I enjoy visiting them. A very small minority will try and verbally abuse you or bully you. Kids will twist words and incidents so they don't get into trouble. Some parents can't believe their angels can do anything wrong. I don't know why they believe that. I've messed up as a kid and as a young adult. My kid is no angel either. That's not to say that teachers don't mess up and twist things either. Former teacher, first parent-teacher conference. I put a lot of time into preparing this evening as an innocent 22-year-old. I gave a 10-minute speech to about 15 family members. They didn't seem to care at all. Then I met up with each individually and they were combative. Some stunk of alcohol. One straight up yelled at me for my grading systems. It was basically the beginning of the end of my interest in teaching. Depending on what kind of training you had to go through to become a teacher in the first place, that seems like a raw deal. Hopefully it wasn't the 3 to 5 years of training that most people do. So this year I got thrown into a new teaching assignment. In Year 2, the week before school started, I teach geometry, which many students hate because it requires a different type of thinking. It's almost worse with honors students because they think they should automatically know everything without trying and are shocked when they don't. Anyway, one of my geometry classes basically tried to stage a mutiny because of a test before conferences. The principal informed me that she was getting emails about the class. I was prepared for the worst and then surprised when most of my conferences were very positive, until one couple sat down and said that their students weren't learning any geometry. I explained that they were constantly distracted in class and that I was giving them new seat assignments to help them focus. Because on the day of conferences, the student in question had spent the entire class period drawing a clown when I thought she was taking notes. The mum said, "That was one incident. It doesn't explain the fact that she's not learning. Plus, is it true that you once forgot to post the answer key to a review guide and then gave the quiz the next day anyway?" She says this like it's the most damning piece of evidence in a courtroom drama. Me? Yes, it did happen once. We'd gone over the majority of the answers in class the day before. I told the students that they had time to ask questions before the quiz, and that should this ever happen again, all they need to do is send an email or leave an online comment and I'll fix it right away. It shouldn't have affected their grade at all, and even if it had, I allow test retakes and am always available after school to help. Cue the awkward silence while the mum stares at me like an angry bullfrog, presumably shocked that I didn't resign on the spot. This was the biggest flaw they could come up with in my class. I have a crazy professional and personal life and am doing my best, but kids, and often parents, will find any possible excuse to avoid confronting their struggles. I ended up chuckling with my principal about the fact that my failing to upload a document triggered parent emails to the administration after the fact when not a single parent or student bothered to contact me the day of. These are from the same parent evening. 1. Parents of a student with a name fancy enough that they may as well have been called Lord and Lady Ashcroft. They greet me with, "It's a pleasure to meet you. You aren't a C-word like all the other teachers." In very proper English. I was gobsmacked. Spoke to a colleague later who said, "Did you speak to those parents? They just sat me down, called me a C-word and left." 2. I had a student who was great at the work but swore to an extent that would make a trooper blush. "Hi, how are you doing today?" for instance, would come out as, "Frickin' hi! Fricking how the frick are you fricking doing, you fricking gobcrap?" Suffice to say, I brought this up with his mother, who turned to him and said, "You fricking what? Fricking heck! We fricking talked about this, you fricking eggplant." I stopped policing his language after that. There wasn't any fricking point. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I mean, it wasn't exactly a bad conference, but one time the mother of a 6-year-old second grader was pushing for her son to skip second grade and go to third grade. I tried pointing out that even though his reading and math skills were excellent, advancing him further would create a gap in his knowledge about science and social studies, not to mention the fact that he's very immature and socially sticks out. Finally, I turned to both the mother and father and asked when he's a 15-year-old senior in high school what 18-year-old woman is going to want to go to the prom with him. Then Dad was like, "Hold up. I'm a school psychologist, not a teacher, but we still have lots of parenting conferences. Worst one, spent a good half hour explaining that I was diagnosing her son with autism and why. Everyone agrees, including the parent, and we move on to developing his IEP. 20 minutes into this, and we're talking about his behavior plan, and she asks me, "I'm wondering, do you think he might have autism?" I do want to say that 98% of parents I work with are kind to school staff and very invested in their children. The stories in this conversation are the exceptions and not the norm. One of my friends just moved from the 4th grade special ed to the 1st grade. The kids are smaller, cuter, and can't draw blood or bruise her as much, which is a plus. The drawback that she's just now realizing is the parents. Older kids' parents have gotten used to the fact that their kid isn't normal and needs extra attention. Parents of the really young kids are still in the denial stage. Half of them still can't accept that their kids should be in special ed and are constantly fighting to get them out. The one where a parent told me it was unreasonable to expect my sophomore US history students to write a 5-paragraph essay. She claimed she had expertise as she used to be an English teacher. Honestly though, I've been very lucky in my career to have never had a seriously bad parent-teacher conference. In my sophomore history class, we had several essays, maybe 3 to 4 a semester. It's wild that she, as an English teacher, would say that was weird. Yep, when she made her claim, it was all I could do to not say, "I see why you used to be an English teacher." This is the same conference where she asked, "Isn't this your first year teaching?" It wasn't. Generally speaking, the parents who see their children as an extension of themselves are the worst to conference with. The parents feel personally attacked when their child has a minor setback and can't imagine their child being anything less than they are. These people are like the worst exaggeration of game players who interpret failure as a personal attack. No, I'm not targeting you, Trevor. You rolled a 4 on the dice when you needed a 12. I had a parent-teacher conference where I basically got called a racist. The father was like, "Can't you see my son isn't like other kids? Give him the benefit of the doubt," heavily indicating his race. This was after his son cheated on a test. The best part was the father was vice principal at another school, but his son went to our expensive private school because he didn't want him in the public school he worked at. The kid eventually confessed, and to be 100% transparent, my school is incredibly diverse. He was far from the only kid there who was his race. Admin was super supportive. They ended up fudging his grade to please the parents after I gave him the 0. They wanted me to do it, but I refused. I told admin they can do whatever they want with the gradebook, but I'm not touching it. I had an experience like that once, was teaching at the majority-minority school where the staff wasn't as representative, only 40% minority teachers. As a result, it was a frequent and not always unwarranted occurrence for a teacher to get labeled as a racist, or at the very least, not treating students equally. I was sitting in a meeting between parents and all of the students' teachers, as well as the principal, to discuss gross behavior concerns we were having with this child. Being really inappropriate with peers, violent outbursts, etc. Parents claimed it was all because of his racist math teacher. The entire time, student is talking in Amharic to his parents and not responding to any English questions we pose. This goes on for about 30 minutes until our math teacher speaks up in what I was later told was perfect Amharic, explaining the situation to the child's parents in their native language. Turns out our white math teacher was a South African orphan that ended up raised in Ethiopia and went to school in the same town as the child's father, albeit 15 years earlier. This whole chain of events pretty much stunned the parents silent, and the meeting wrapped up a few short minutes later. When asked about what he'd said, the teacher told us that he'd reminded the parents that were their son still in Ethiopia, he would have been hauled in front of the school at lunchtime and paddled in front of his entire class for what he'd done, that a bell would have been rung 50 times, once for each time he was paddled, just as he, as well as the kid's parents, had no doubt experienced as a child, and that the child was lucky they were in a part of the world that had gotten rid of such practices. But their child's behavior was utterly inexcusable, and how dare they suggest that the color of their skin somehow makes it okay for their child to disrespect women and commit violence. Unfortunately, it had little effect, and 3 years later the student was in jail for selling substances to minors, less than 6 months after being expelled for intentionally starting a fire in the art room. I was a first-year special education teacher last year. I had little support that year and learned as I went, but especially since I was dealing with health problems at the same time, it wasn't a great year for me or the students. I should add that the majority of my students were bilingual, English and Spanish, and many of the parents didn't speak English at all. My Spanish is advanced beginner at best, so I became well acquainted with a few of the interpreters that worked in translation. There are a few that stick out in my mind. The worst was when the interpreter was a no-show during an ARD meeting. AP requested that I reschedule the meeting. The parent was understanding, but I was so stressed out and embarrassed that the parent came all the way to the school just for the meeting to not happen at all, with the due date for that child's ARD soon approaching. Once everyone had left the room and was out of earshot, I broke down crying. Second to that meeting with a parent who was scared to death that her child had autism. I worked with him more throughout the first semester, and I did begin to notice some possible and very subtle signs of autism, but he didn't have behavioral problems aside from needing regular redirection, and he got along well with his peers, so I wasn't too worried about him from a social standpoint. Academically, he was struggling, but we were working on that. The parent was in tears, and nothing I said could calm her down. What made this especially uncomfortable for me was that I'd been finally diagnosed with autism not even a year prior after suspecting for so long in my life. I wanted so much to assure her that even if her son did have autism, it wasn't the end of the world. It didn't change who he was as a person, but I wasn't exactly sure how. The last one was where the parent ended up being a no-show for an ARD. Mum was apparently pregnant and ended up going to the hospital, which I can understand, but no one could get in touch with any relative to find out what was going on until after the scheduled time. This particular parent had a history of being rather uncaring. The daughter was having some major behavioral issues, ended up getting suspended twice that year, and when her general educational teachers talked to Mum after school, her response was, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I had a student as a sophomore in a co-teach special ed class. The student was borderline ID, he passed the heavily modified class. Students with these types of educational accommodations and modifications aren't able to attend a 4-year university. They can attend community colleges. The next year he was in my class again. I contacted his case manager and the parents told her they wanted to put him in regular classes so that he would be eligible to attend a 4-year university. We documented his work and scheduled a parent conference. We politely told the parent that their son was bombing the class because he was out of his depth, and we wanted to do the right thing and move him into co-teach classes where he could be successful. The parents argued with us that he was doing well in his other classes. He was passing with a 70 in every one. This is because his teachers didn't want to crush the kid, and grade protected him. His parents continued with, "We both are college graduates and our son will be too." This was ego. We want to provide the student with the proper levels of support. Finally, I was exasperated and called the student in. We spent 2 weeks on Islam and religion, so I asked the student to define Islam. The response was, "An island in the Pacific." Yeah, they still argued with us. Heck, I'd have given him a partial credit for the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, or any other body of water in that region. We eventually got him in the right classes and he graduated with his class. Teachers want what's best for your child because they're our students and we want them to succeed. That's true. I remember having a teacher who did not like me and I did not like them, and I downright hated their subject. But damn, they persisted. Kept me in after class and I probably wouldn't have passed math without them. Most of them want what's best for your kids, guys. Parent accused me of singling out her child, talking to them differently versus the other 25 kids, sitting around and doing bugger all except talking about my romantic life, plus more wild, hurtful accusations. Also accused me of trying to be friends with students, all of which couldn't be further from the truth. I pointed out that I have a TA with me who could dispute those claims. Also legal documents backing up how her child was lying, documenting all the inappropriate behavior and harassment her child had directed at me, with times and dates. The parent continued to reiterate that she believed I was a liar and tore verbal shreds off me for almost 2 hours, no matter how much I repeatedly defended myself. I've never felt so disrespected and belittled my entire life. I was teaching 8th grade. I called a parent due to having their child repeatedly disrupt my class. I don't like to kick students out because to me that means that they've won. They aren't learning anything if they aren't in my room. I also operate on the idea that even if they're tuning me out, they may read one of my posters and retain something. Anyway, I called a parent explaining that their child was disruptive, blurting out, passing notes, moving to different seats, texting, saying rude things, etc. And the parent said, "I bet my child isn't the only one." I responded, "You're right, but I'm talking to you about your child, not someone else's. Isn't it your job to correct their classroom behavior?" I responded, "I've explained the steps I've taken to support your child in the classroom. What do you want me to do about it?" I responded, "Well, I'm not old enough to be your child's parent, so I would appreciate parental support." This is what I said instead of, "Parent your fricking child." There was one kid in one of my classes who had seizure disorder. So one day we had a guest in the room and he wasn't doing any of his work. Then when she asked why, he said, "I have seizure disorder, so I don't have to do any work." They then told me, the student teacher, and then I told my mentor teacher. His family and I had a parent-teacher conference already scheduled that day, so when I brought it up, the dad goes, "My son didn't say that, the guest was making that up." Yes, the guest came into the room, figured out that your kid had seizure disorder, and then told me your kid said that just for fun. Okay. Probably the time when both the dad and the son were high as frick. Both were nodding off in the meeting. The mother looked like she was on the verge of tears. Poor kid never stood a chance. What were some wild things you saw happen at Olive Garden, or another restaurant with an all-you-can-eat deal? Oh, this is something I can actually answer. I was working a lunch shift and had a table of 3 come in, all mid-30s women. I bought the initial bread basket out, turned around, and they were gone. Okay, y'all were hungry, that's normal. Bought a new basket out and it happened again. Kept bringing baskets of bread, had to be 7 or 8. At this point, we're talking about 30 breadsticks, and the food hasn't even hit the table yet. I start watching and they're putting the bread in their purses, just filling them up. Manager asks them politely to stop, and that was that. They weren't thrilled. Wasn't putting breadsticks in your purse a meme at some point? I've never understood why a purse. So I'm a dude and I don't own one, nor have I ever looked up how much money they are. But aren't purses super expensive? Like, I get you can put a bag in there, but if that bag fails, you'll have a greasy, cheesy, garlicky mess in your purse. Are those maybe $6 worth of breadsticks really worth it? Don't get me wrong, I love Olive Garden breadsticks, but still, man. I was a waiter. I had a couple of middle-aged ladies there from lunch until early dinner, roughly between 1 and 6 p.m., with the unlimited soup and salad, water to drink, of course. Manager said something to the effect of, if they want to sit there that long, let 'em. After lunch, I gave the table to the waitress relieving me. I told her to keep the tip. We both knew they weren't going to tip. The thing I found amazing was their casual, marathon-style conversation. Slow, steady, long pauses, and comfortable silences. They both knew what they were doing. When I left around 3 or 4, they weren't even winded. I worked at Olive Garden years ago. Not entirely related, but I had a middle-aged, overweight woman always order a pint of Alfredo sauce as soon as she sat down. They sell it in quantities like that for takeout orders, and she would slop it down with about 6 breadsticks before she ordered appetizers. We're talking 2,000 plus calories before appetizers and dinner. I still remember her ordering, and her mouth opening and closing like a gooey, heavy cream sarlacc pit. You have just ruined Alfredo sauce for me. I'm hungover. This just made me gag. Ugh. Used to rent a room from someone who ordered a never-ending pasta pass, and they were accidentally sent too. Rent paid for itself that month. How much is a pass? If I remember correctly, it was $100. A couple of months ago, there was a couple who would come in literally every night and eat dinner. I was still new to that Olive Garden location, so I didn't really know who they were, and I thought they were some rich college kids who blew their parents' money on average pasta. I asked around, and apparently they had a pass. It explained the frequency, but I still can't fathom how anyone wants to eat Olive Garden that much, even if it's basically free. Note that when I said literally, I meant literally. Every single night they came in and got food for at least a month. Oh, the person who wrote that last part lived a very different poor student life to the one I did, if they even lived one at all. Compared to my 2 portions of porridge a day that I had in my dorms, if I had free food at a restaurant for a month, I would be in one of these stories. I saw her stealing the breadsticks, putting them in her big purse when I wasn't near, and kept asking for more. I can't blame her, they're delicious. Were you my server in New Hampshire like 10 years ago? I got so busted doing that. Haven't shown my face in an Olive Garden since. Also New Hampshire here, Manchester. My grandmother always stuffs her purse with bread. You guys know you can just ask for some to go, right? You usually get at least 5 or 6 to take. You ask for some to go on top of putting them in your purse. Maximize your take home. I went with a buddy 2 weeks ago with their pasta pass, and we could hardly finish 1 bowl each. But our waitress kept asking if we'd like more, wink wink. So we got another helping of pasta straight into a to-go box. And then she basically said, "You're my only table right now, so if you guys want more food, just keep ordering and I'll bring you more." We took home 3 bags full of Olive Garden and only stopped because we didn't want her to get into trouble. Needless to say, she got a nice tip because we were meal prepped for the week. The Wendy's in the town I grew up in would do this if you went through the drive-thru at 12:50. Closed at 1 a.m. Basically, anything left over they'd have to throw out would end up in your bag. I'd buy like 1 thing off the dollar menu and get a damn feast. I missed that place, and being at a point in my life where a meal at 1 a.m. was reasonable. A friend of mine worked at Wendy's back in college. He would show up at our apartment with 3 or 4 bags of food every few days. He'd cook it right around 12:30 a.m. and then leave work and show up. We were all so high when he came over, it was like he was sent from burger heaven. It was 11:45 p.m. and we'd closed at 11 p.m. They showed up at 10:55 and complained they felt rushed. Meal was comped and they left no tip. I hated serving. Another story I just remembered, we had a guy who had a pasta pass, pay $100 and get all the pasta you could ever want in a month, and would come in and eat and then proceed to either wait until he had to poop or made himself spew to make room for more pasta. He usually came alone with the same crusty outfit and would tell everyone how much money he's saving by coming every day and eating pasta. Oh, I've got plenty more. For example, I had a family who we call the Alfredo family. Literally the worst people I've ever met. Came once a week and complained about literally everything. Kids would run around the entire restaurant and steal tips from other tables that were left out. They got the charming nickname because no matter how much Alfredo sauce you put on their pasta, it was never enough. I'm talking 10 to 15 scoops worth of sauce each. They literally used every excuse to get comped food and gift cards. The drink was either too flat or the food too dry. We were the worst Olive Garden ever apparently, which made no sense since they came once a week. They must have gotten thousands of dollars in comps and free gift cards. It was terrible. They even tried to lure out one of the managers to the parking lot to assault her because she was seriously over their crap. Guess what they got for pulling that stunt? A $200 gift card. My girlfriend says only a manager can cut someone off from the unlimited food deals, and the only time that they cut someone off was during the unlimited pasta event. He ate so much he couldn't eat anymore, but he refused to leave because he wanted to wait until he could eat more. There was a place called It's with a buffet, movie room, cartoon room, sports bar room, and arcade. It had $2 Tuesdays, $2 buffet. Many people would come for lunch, watch movies until dinner, and eat again. I don't work at Olive Garden, I'm just going to share a story that happened there last week. It was my birthday on the 22nd, and a friend wanted to take me because she had a gift card. She said I could have it, but I asked her to go with me to use it. There's only one Olive Garden in town, and it's always a madhouse, but we went anyways because of the gift card. Got there, waited maybe 20 minutes for a table, and all was going well. We'd just put in a drink order, and we looked over the menu when suddenly, bam, power went out. Floodlights immediately kicked in, so it wasn't dark. So we waited, hadn't even received our drinks yet. The waiter brings us waters. Soda couldn't be bought because something about the machine not working with the power out. No big deal. We're asked to see what the situation is, but we can leave if we'd like. Most people stay hoping for it to come back on, us included. 5-minute pass and the waiter brings out breadsticks and salad, so we're happy to snack while we wait. 10 minutes later, we're told someone ran their car into the transformer so power wouldn't be coming back on. Good news was all soups, salads and breadsticks had to be given out because they couldn't stay out, and it was all free. Our waiter even managed to snag a cheesecake slice for me because it was my birthday, which was also free. He received a large tip that night. A 30% tip on a free meal. Reminds me of how my brother and I were craving Olive Garden, so we went to our local one, but the power was out. That's okay, we drove 5 miles to the next nearest one, got in the door, said one word to the hostess, and the power went out there too. So like good boys, we just found the next closest one. Boy, those breadsticks taste so much better when you have to fight nature for them. Not Olive Garden, but similar. My skinny as frick uncle once got the all-you-can-eat shrimp at Sizzler, and was eventually told he couldn't have any more. The man had easily eaten over 100 shrimp. It was pretty funny. Mrs. Simpson, what did you and your husband do after you were ejected from the restaurant? Oh, we pretty much went straight home. Mrs. Simpson, you're under oath. We drove around until 3 a.m. looking for another all-you-can-eat fish restaurant. And when you couldn't find one, we went fishing. Does that sound like a man who had all he could eat? I'm sorry, but that's all I could think of during that story. I'll admit that I was also thinking of this scene when I read the original story, and that last commenter is responsible for you all having to suffer through my Marge Simpson impression. There are more non-cartoon comments on the incident to follow. Your uncle was deceived. 300 shrimp is nothing. Former Red Lobster server here, the record for endless shrimp was 35 refills, roughly 10 shrimp per refill, plus the 30 shrimp in the original order. All scampi. 380 shrimp. The dude dipped them in water first to remove the scampi butter. It was disgusting. The water thing makes me think that he was maybe a competitive eater, probably training. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm originally from Eastern Europe, but I worked at Olive Garden in South Carolina during my work and travel trip. It was my first time in the US, and the whole experience was great, but also often awkward. It was weird from the start. People who hired me were very surprised with me showing them an actual work permit. Oh yeah, we totally needed that. There wasn't many foreigners in that part of South Carolina, so the manager decided that it would work great if I pretend to be Italian, to make their authentic Italian dining experience even more authentic. I really needed that job, so I rolled with it, welcoming guests with my Eastern European/fake Italian accent, and people loved it. Oh, I love your accent. It's from northern Italy, right? Yeah, about 2,000 miles northeast of Rome, mate. South Carolinians were some of the kindest and nicest people I ever met, although often confused with geography. I'm actually from Poland, I admitted to the great older guy. Poland? Ha! My father liberated Amsterdam. I got great tips, but this one time, one family liked me so much that the father went back to his house and came back with actual Polish bills. He left me 1,000 Polish zlotys and patted my shoulder as he was leaving. Good luck, kid. He had no way of knowing that the bills he left were communist currency with present total value of precisely 3 cents. Anyway, the worst kind of clients were the ones who just wanted soup and salad and unlimited breadsticks. I'm not sure how it works now, but when this was all unlimited, you had to run around refilling everything, knowing that 3 hours of this will bring you a $2 tip. Hey, it's 20%. 40-year-old ladies were the worst. I preferred a table of cartel members who spoke no English than a group of 4 ladies, with at least one named Karen. Still, super salad people were nothing in comparison to yearly Olive Garden Armageddon, which was the unlimited pasta bowl deal. It was something like $9.99 per bowl with unlimited refills of pasta, sauces, meatballs, and sausage. I had one guy who ate 13 bowls. That's almost 4 kilos of pasta. Still, the only time you could cut somebody off those refills was when they hoarded them in hidden boxes. And that happened a lot. I had a guy who was ordering breadsticks refills every 4 minutes and putting them in his backpack. He said it was for his hiking trip. Stoners often got stuck on eating breadsticks, and once their main meals arrived, they realized they're about to explode and politely asked for boxes. Not Olive Garden, but I got cut off from Denny's unlimited pancakes after 10 flapjacks. I was less than 120 pounds at the time. The cook was surprised when he came out to cut me off. Are you talking 10 pancakes or 10 plates? Right, like 10 pancakes is doable, I'd feel ill, but I could get it in there. It's not an absolutely insane amount. Oh, that depends on what kind of pancake. After 10 Dutch pancakes, I would just keel over and die. My brother once said he had over 30 pancakes at IHOP during their unlimited pancakes. He said after 25 it hurt, but he wanted to get to 30, so he pushed on. I'm still sad I wasn't there to see it. The manager told me I'd reached my limit in unlimited pasta bowls. Apparently unlimited means 9 pasta bowls. Wow, the most I've seen was 6. I wasn't serving the guy, but I did run a lot of the bowls. He didn't even finish many, it just seemed like he wanted to do a sampler of all the classics. If you get the most expensive one, we let you get refills of the cheaper ones if you want. I mentioned the guy to our manager that night, and all she said was, "Good for him, getting his money's worth." I worked at Old Country Buffet in the early 90s. We never cut anyone off, but here are a few things I recall. Elderly couples coming in for breakfast and staying all day. They were usually nice, so we didn't mind. Eventually, the restaurant made you pay again if you stayed after breakfast or lunch. One person dumped the entire pan of shrimp onto their plate. Whole plates of fried chicken piled high, just vanishing into thin air, not even bones remaining. Ziploc bags are a wonderful thing. Whole other plates of fried chicken piled high, left sitting to be thrown away with not one bite taken. The strawberry shortcake bar never failed to have people vomiting. No, you shouldn't put that much whipped cream inside of you. My favorite story involved a woman pulling a manager aside and saying, "I don't want to cause a scene, but I found this fishhook in the seafood salad." And the manager replying, "I don't want to cause a scene either, but there ain't nothing in that seafood salad that was caught with a hook." Yum yum. I mean, if it's that cheap, it has to be both non-hazardous and ethically caught, right? Honestly, there is probably a certain price bracket below which complaining is meaningless. I'm always afraid they're going to kick me out for eating too much, 3 or 4 baskets of breadsticks maybe. On the soup note, anyone else ever wonder how far you can push the "say when" on cheese grating? Sometimes I have guests who are embarrassed or feign embarrassment about the amount of cheese they like. I always say the same thing. Every moment I grate cheese is a moment I'm not carrying a 30-plus pound tray of food or dirty dishes. This isn't a workout for me, it's a rest break. You say when you're good and ready, lady. I've gone through an entire block before, plus some. I'll go back and get more if you really want me to. Also, my arm never hurts. I do this 40 hours a week. You think your one bowl of soup with more than average cheese is going to make my arm hurt? I worked at Olive Garden for 4 years. It's a chain, so you never cut people off, but good lord, I dished out some soup, salad, bread, and pasta. I had an obese 25-ish male regular who had Asperger's and came in with his enabling mother every week. Always the worst tip of the week, but they always requested me. It was the same thing every week for the guy: a tour of Italy, lasagna, chick parm, and fat alfredo, and 4 bowls of pasta fagioli with a block of grated cheese in each bowl. Not to mention the 2 blocks on the tour of Italy. The mother would just smile the whole time and call me sweetie as her son gorged himself to death. Those 4 years there were hell. Plenty more stories of a similar nature. Worked TGI Fridays for endless apps. Watched a guy eat 12 orders of pot stickers. That's 72 pot stickers. He also drank 14 refills of Diet Coke with no ice. That's 308 ounces of Diet Coke. This all happened in about 90 minutes. Then he asked for the dessert menu. I was both disgusted and impressed. Only got to cut one person off because her B-word butt decided to complain long enough about the zuppa to get her whole meal comped. Choked down a bowl of gnocchi and then tried to eat more zuppa. Then she had the audacity to ask me to take a bowl home. Big ol' nope. Was tipped with a Jesus pamphlet. When I was a teenager, my uncle was a youth pastor and invited me to an event. After, we went to a local Friendlies, 15 people in total. He left a business card for his church as his tip. I was so teed off. My mum had given me a 20 for food, so before I left, I stopped my waiter and handed it to him. I went in there a lot, and he was a nice guy and a good waiter, and it was all I had. I would have left more if I could, and I told him that, and what he could expect to find on the table. He thanked me. I was like 15 and knew better than to not tip, especially for a large party. Being Christian means helping others, and that includes tipping your waitstaff. Worked in various Olive Gardens off and on over the course of a decade, ranging from Houston to Boston. Even was a trainer for a bit before deciding to go to law school. Never had to cut someone off for unlimited breadsticks or salad. Never had to cut someone off for unlimited pasta bowls. A guy I served at the Olive Garden in Greenville, South Carolina, ate his original bowl plus 15 refills. He was determined to eat each one of the pasta and sauce combinations. He kept me wildly busy, running pasta and bread out to him all evening. His two friends had to help him walk out of the restaurant. At the time, a big bowl of pasta was 8 ounces and the refills were 4 ounces. He ate 4.25 pounds of pasta, plus a lot of sauce, and had the meat add-on many of them. I'm guessing he cleared out more than 6 pounds of food over the course of that meal. He tipped $4. On the other hand, I've been in a restaurant where we've run out of breadsticks. Normally, we were pretty free with the breadsticks. You have a set amount you're supposed to bring out, number of guests at a table plus 1, but a lot of the servers just load up their tables at the beginning to minimize the amount of running they have to do. On the handful of days where we ran out, the managers were watching breadstick load up like hawks. We couldn't eat any of them ourselves either. Normally, it's the one thing you can eat while on shift. Anyway, people absolutely lose their crap if they show up and find out we don't have breadsticks. The hosts were warning everyone who came through the door, and people were still mad. Folks would yell at them, then leave. The few who stayed were nice, but kept talking about how it didn't feel like an Olive Garden meal without the breadsticks. The worst were the tables that were already seated when we ran out. I had one who kept asking me why I was being so stingy, and when I explained why I'd only bought out enough for each person instead of a huge load up, like she'd asked for, she screamed for the manager. The manager explained that she had, in fact, gotten the last basket of breadsticks in the restaurant. The lady looked apoplectic. How the frick does an Olive Garden run out of breadsticks? Honestly, I feel you, lady, but it was 2 days after Mother's Day and the truck was due in 3 hours. The manager's orders had fallen short by less than 0.5%. This lady demanded that everything be comped. While my managers were normally the kind who would do this immediately, this one refused. Either way, I got $0 on that table, and most of the other tables were similarly cranky and low tipping. Yeah, that's an everybody loses hospitality situation if I've ever heard one. Also, I've said this before in another restaurant stories video, but screw working Mother's Day. Not worth it. When we were in high school, a bunch of friends went to an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. After gorging on many plates, one of my friends who was legendary for his eating prowess went for dessert. He took a whole banana cream pie. A manager came over and berated him for being wasteful. There were some vague threats of making him pay extra if he didn't finish the pie. The friend proceeded to eat the whole pie. The manager told him to never come back. My mum got kicked out of an all-you-can-eat sushi place once. She was pretty mad. The manager somehow didn't think a small Filipino from Hawaii could eat that much. He's obviously never met anyone remotely Filipino. This would be a fun prank to play on an Olive Garden if you were triplets. Just sneak in one at a time and keep ordering a crap ton of salad and breadsticks. The guy just put away baskets and baskets. I don't understand. When I was a flight attendant, I used to hate serving first class because the people were grumpy. On the night flights, we didn't have great food in first class because most people were sleeping and the food is expensive, etc. One night, I only had one gentleman awake in the first class section and he wanted the meal. Turns out the meal that night was just some sad pesto pasta and a soft breadstick, which I served to him. The man grumpily goes, "What is this, Olive Garden?" And without thinking, I said in a weird Italian accent, "When you're here, your family." And he just looked at me and sort of smirked. Still one of my proudest moments. Sort of related, this customer came in and asked my coworker, who was new at the time, if they could have a box of chocolates, like the 15-pound box that we get off the truck. I was in the kitchen and saw her walking out with the box. I asked her what she was doing and she said she was giving the customer what they asked for. I quickly took that box and told them both no. It's crazy what some people have the nerve to ask for. My buddy and I went to Olive Garden damn near 30 years ago. We're looking up at the menu trying to figure out what we're going to order and the waitress walks up. "Welcome to Olive Garden, blah blah blah." I forget the spiel. With your entree, you can get unlimited salad or soup, or something to that effect. Oh, what kind of soup do you have? My buddy inquires. Well, you can get either the soup or the salad, she clarifies. I understand, but what kind of soup do you have? He asks again. Entries come with either soup or salad, she asserts a little testily. My buddy kind of glances over at me like, am I having a stroke? I look up at the waitress and confidently ask, okay, so what kind of soup do you have? You can get minestrone, or our daily special is the potato cream soup. I'll just have the salad, thanks, I say as my buddy facepalms and starts giggling. Even 30 years later, anytime I see him, I always ask what kind of soup do you have? What did you think you were into in the bedroom until you tried it? Going down on a guy. I've practiced with toys and can do it like a champ on my own, but as soon as he starts vigorously face-fricking me, like I always thought I'd like, it's like 3 thrusts and my gag reflex goes, nope, nope, nope. Doing the deed in front of a bunch of people. My ex and I were with 2 friends at a bar, and it was almost last call. I wasn't ready to call it a night, and being drunk, I jokingly threw out the idea of going to this swingers club that I'd heard of. My girlfriend and her friends were surprisingly into the idea. So we go to this club and I thought it would be a lot of couples. Ended up being about 60 dudes, 2 or 3 girls, and my girlfriend and her friends, and myself. The club was actually pretty freaking cool. My girlfriend and I went in a private room and went at it, then we went to a room with a ton of windows. Literally every person in the club watched my girlfriend and I go at it, along with her friends just sitting and watching. I thought it was weird as frick and kind of gross, but my girlfriend and her friends were really into it and she always asked to go back. Pretty much anything that I've seen in the special interests section of the adult flick store. I realized that I'm actually a pretty vanilla guy who just really enjoys watching weird crap once in a while. I thought I had a thing for whips. I enjoyed a whipping without a safe word and I regretted it right away. Never do anything like that without a safe word. Also, if you're trying to come up with one, what my wife and I use is a reference to a meme that we can't think about without laughing. 10 out of 10, ends things pretty well without being a total bummer. Kind of like this, I think I'm not into extreme spontaneous fun or doing the deed while asleep. My girlfriend woke me in the middle of the night because she wanted to do the deed. I had to work overtime the whole week, it was a Wednesday and all I wanted was going back to Dreamland. I said yes and she climbed on top of me. I fell asleep while doing it, but seemed to have stayed hard. The next morning the whole bed was a mess, including her and me, and she slept like a stone. We had bruises and were covered in sticky stuff. I felt like Jim Carrey in Me, Myself and Irene. Completely dehydrated and everything hurt. I have no memory of anything that happened. Later that day, my girlfriend was the happiest and kindest person in the whole world and smiled the whole week. I wish I knew what happened that night. And no, it wasn't the unspeakable act. She had my blessing to proceed in general. When I asked her, she said she used me to feel free and powerful and then she smiled. She jokes that I'm better in my sleep than her 2 exes were awake. So, no details. That is one of the strangest and most unique ones that I've read so far, and I have so many questions. Too bad that it doesn't actually sound like fun for the guy. Getting choked out. I'm a guy. I somehow thought that busting a nut while on the verge of passing out would lead to a military-grade explosion. My girlfriend was skeptical but humored me. Long story short, getting choked out ain't it, chief. I always thought I'd enjoy guys being more dominant and forceful until when I was in my teens I was sitting in an overgrown riverbank, facing forward with my boyfriend sitting behind me, his legs either side of mine. Suddenly he decided to choke me from behind without asking, and when I freaked his excuse was that he wanted to test if I was into that kind of thing. If that hadn't happened I might have enjoyed it in a consensual manner, but that one experience was so terrifying I'd never be down for trying it again under any circumstances. I thought that I was into girls that scratched and bit you. I mean, I'm still into girls that bite, but I was dating a girl in high school and she was big into scratching. I really should have seen the signs that she wasn't going to be gentle. She was just this tiny, cute girl. I was a half-foot taller, bigger, and tough. No way she could hurt me, right? Nope, dead wrong. I like to think I have a pretty high pain threshold, but she enjoyed hurting me. She'd scratch me up hard when we were making out. She'd get carried away, and I didn't want to seem like a wuss, so I didn't say anything about it. My back looked like I'd been attacked by a raccoon. I got carried away once. I knew I was scratching him, but nothing serious, or so I thought. When we were finished, he sat at the edge of the bed, and I saw his back. Dear Lord, it was completely scratched and red. How did I even reach all those spots? I was surprised and blurted out, "Oh God, you're back!" But he just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I figured. Pegging. I thought I was super into it, and my ex loved it when I played with his butt anyway, just grabbing it, nothing inside, so he bought me what we'll call a frontal attachment. Well, I wanted to warm him up first so I didn't tear his butt apart, but the second I spread his cheeks, I got a whiff of his butt and almost spewed all over him. Doing the deed in the shower. I slipped and made us both fall. The water washes out the lubricant fluids too, isn't that nice?
I'd love to see the opposite quote. What didn't you think you were into until you tried it?
Female here, riding my male partner like a real champ. It felt amazing, I was feeling a little extra hot and I told him to slap me across the face. He did, and I instantly burst into tears. I had a girl kind of start going down on me, then she bit the side of my stomach, hard, like she was going to try and taste my liver, shriveled up like a sack of dimes and shoved her off. Trying this kind of thing without discussion is bad practice, but pain is especially bad. Swinging and cucking. Trying to give some guy's wife the dipstick while he watches in the corner feeding the geese is a lot more stress-inducing than pleasurable.
Feeding the geese? How have I never heard this one before?
I would like to thank Urban Dictionary for helping me understand 80% of these posts. Having a girl grind on me. My member doesn't bend that many angles very comfortably, thank you. Standing and carrying the person while doing the deed. I could do it and I'm in pretty good shape, but I wouldn't exactly say it was enjoyable for either of us. I still want to try Amazon, but I think I'd rather just have cowgirl. I haven't seen open relationships posted yet, but that was a humbling experience. My ex and I decided to explore a bit and set up some profiles on Plenty of Fish and FetLife. I figured since we were both looking for hookup partners, we'd match and find a couple that would be compatible. Fricking nope. Like 3 minutes after our profiles went up, there was an eggplant explosion in her email inbox. It was like watching Niagara Falls, just with non-stop wang pictures. I'm not gay, but some of those dudes were chiseled and cute as frick. Like even I knew I was outclassed. I had like 2 messages and none turned into anything. We broke up shortly afterwards, compatibility being an issue. Being tied up. I like it when my partner is tied, but I can't be. Just not as much of a turn-on as I thought it would be. For some reason, foot stimulation always seemed hot, but in all my experiences none of them were good, and the risk of accidentally being kicked in the balls stressed me out. I thought I had a foot thing until I actually tried playing with my girlfriend's feet. Turns out I just like how pretty feet look, from a distance.
This is how I feel about people in general.
Same. I'm gay, but I really appreciate female beauty. That's why I was sure I was bisexual until I was doing the deed with this beautiful girl, thinking about guys trying to finish. Gotta appreciate your dedication to the job that you had already begun there, mate. One time, years ago, I was doing the deed with a friend and he was close to finishing and he asked if he could call me mummy. The guy was full on inside of me. I wasn't going to say no even though I wasn't into it, so I played along to get the job done. In the 5 years since then, it has been this nagging thought in the back of my head that I want someone to call me mummy. I'm so embarrassed by it that I've never even brought it up, even though we do plenty of new, interesting stuff and it would totally be okay to ask. Earlier this year, I finally told my partner and went immediately bright red. He was into it and played along with enthusiasm, and I gotta tell you, I'm still not into it. I think it just got stuck in my head because it was so naughty and taboo, but in real life, it's just not hot. Since then, I've shoved the cat back into the bag and we've sworn never to discuss it again. I still have that little voice in my head saying to be a good boy and finish in mummy's hoo-ha, but now I just ignore it. Burning. I had an ex who was really into burning with candle wax. Not the massage candles, legit candle wax. Made a huge mess and burned a lot. I was fine with this and even had a lot of fun. The problem was, she was a sadomasochist who loved causing pain. I'm okay with this, but it led to one time where she poured candle wax over me while I was tied up. I have chest hair. This was all well and good at the time, and I didn't even mind that my hair would have to be ripped out later. In her excitement, she also decided it would be appropriate to put a freshly snuffed match against my frenulum. I would avoid this, and I do not recommend it. Since then, I'm not enticed or aroused by candle wax anymore.
Wait, frenulum as in on your pee-pee?
Yes, the little fleshy bridge that connects the underside of the head to the shaft. Jesus fricking Christ! What in the crispy Kentucky Fried Frick? Ice cream. She got me nice and hard and then laid out scoops of ice cream around my tower of power. Froze my eggplant and then started melting down my butt crack, and pretty soon my butt was sticky. She tried her best to lick everything up, but that didn't make things any better. Worse was that it got on the bedsheets and we had to clean everything, which took up all of our day. Nobody got to finish that day. Hell, I'm here looking for new ideas. I thought I'd be into dominating type play. I liked the idea of being called names like whore or B-word until my husband called me that, consensually, and I cried. One time my husband was talking nasty to me while we did the deed and he called me a whore and I instantly burst into tears. Haha. I love being called the normal nasty stuff, like a dirty girl and a whore, but once my ex called me a pig and that's when I learned my limit. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Being slapped and called names and choked. I guess roughly doing the deed in general. I did it with this one guy who was super into it and he would choke me way too hard and slap me across the face. Kept calling me a fricking B-word and that I was nothing more than a whore and a dirty girl. He also spat on me during the deed. I realized that I wasn't into it at all and I cut things off. With my current partner though, he likes to choke me but he doesn't apply pressure, just wraps his hands around my neck and he says things like, "You like that, you dirty girl." And if I'm in the right mood, he only does it if I give him the go-ahead. I do quite enjoy it. P. I found a guy who was into it and I spent years fantasizing about it. Spent about a month fricking around with him and involving P in various ways. Turns out, it's just messy. I didn't dislike it, but I have no interest in doing it again. I still watch it in adult flicks though. Previous time this question was asked, some guy said he loved the idea of being crapped on. He found a lady of the night who offered the service, booked a session, and they got down to it. He said that as soon as she started crapping on him, he realized he really didn't like being crapped on. I'll bite and comment. Doing the deed outdoors. I absolutely loved that idea in fantasy. In reality, the beach is super cold and windy. Blankets are hard to keep on. Hobos walk up to you randomly even though you swear no one was around. Sand. Sand everywhere. Non-erotic walk back to the car. Disgruntled going home. Hopefully not a night killer. In the woods it's pleasant at first, but then the bug bites start. The cold nips your skin. Bark is rather rough and has ants. Feeling secluded yet not isolated, always wondering if someone will walk by. Splinters. Rocks that are pointy jabbing into random parts of your body trying to do positions. Wild animals around. Other than that, the other that I'd say is melon clamps. I thought they were more exciting than the painful they turned out to be. Kind of basic, but the daddy or little girl thing. I love being dominated, but my gosh, it felt so degrading and not in a good way. And creepy acting like a ditzy child who needs approval to do everything. Not to insult anybody who's into it, but yeah, I realized it wasn't for me after all. I was super into the idea of whacking it while wearing a skirt, and when my girlfriend found out, she was kind of into the idea of me doing the deed with her while I wore a skirt because she was bisexual. Her words, not my assumption, but it didn't really work for either of us. Then again, I think we might not have been compatible or just inexperienced, because I also thought I didn't like girls going down on me until my next girlfriend did, and it was a revelation. Gangbang. Definitely not working out in my favor. Agreed. I didn't actively dislike it, but 4 dudes whacking the goose while watching you do the deed is a little strange. I was mostly shocked by the lightheartedness and jovial atmosphere. Do you want to turn in her butt? Oh, sure, thanks, man. Absolutely, let me get out of the way. When the whole thing was wrapping up, the chick was on her knees with everything getting ready to splooge into her face, and one guy almost blew it on my shoe, and I said something to the effect of, "Hey, watch the shoes, man," to which everyone, her included, started cracking up, just to further illustrate the jovial atmosphere. Well, after reading that, I can confirm what I already knew, that I have no desire to try it out. Also, the less of my friends' eggplants I see in my life, the better. Doing the deed with someone who was cheating on her boyfriend. We were friends with benefits before, but then she got a boyfriend. A few weeks later, she still contacted me. Going at her place, I thought it was hot, but then all I kept thinking about was him and how he was probably in love with her, and how crushed his heart would be if he knew. There's nothing fun or phantasmagorical about that, I thought. I had a panic attack, left, cut contact with her, and now I just feel dirty. Every bit deserved, though. Pegging and milking. It was fricking exhausting. I felt like, why haven't you splooged already? I'm bored. After an hour of licking, positions, thrusting, titillating, the taint, Crisco, blah blah blah, I felt blessed as a woman and I had a new respect for the endurance people had to get me off.
pee. Even if you're cool with it during the act, the second you get off you realize you're just covered in pee. And if you're like me, you try it again just to be sure and you want to bang your head into a wall because you can never be unpeed on. I don't know if it's the same per se because it's kind of mainstream, but three-ways just aren't as fun as I thought. The pressure to make sure everyone was having a blast kind of ruined it for me. Don't want anybody to feel left out, you know? Doing the deed outdoors. I got a 2-inch splinter of wood shoved right up my butt. In the cheek, that is. Can confirm, ended up with half my leg covered in poison ivy. And no, dumb 17-year-old me didn't see any poison ivy around before the deed. Being called daddy. The first time doing the deed with this girl I met in a bar, she goes right into, "F me, daddy." I always thought it would be hot to hear, but nope. Instant eggplant kill. My mind immediately went to, oh crap, she might have some serious issues. Turns out I was right too. I thought I'd be into choking. I already liked to be lightly spanked and act like a bratty sub. I think it's funny to be annoying, so I just thought it would be a natural step in my kinks. Didn't like it one bit. Nothing bad really happened, no freak accident, just got turned off real quick. I once hooked up with a girl who said she liked to be choked. I was kind of a mild guy, but I was like, okay, if that's your thing. The moment I saw her eyes as I was grasping her neck, I thought, holy crap, she really likes that. And that turned me on like frick. Also, it's nice to be lightly choked when being treated yourself. See, on the one hand, it kind of upsets me because I really thought I'd like it because of what you described, and that sounds awesome. But alas, it just does nothing for me. Woman here, doing the deed while asleep. I'd go pantyless when sleeping out of comfort, but I also gave my boyfriend the go-ahead to frick me if he wanted. Didn't bother with foreplay, just his eggplant. I wasn't prepped and it didn't feel great. Another partner kissed my hot spot when he wanted it in the morning, whilst I was asleep, and it made a difference. Having a willing, of course, shall we say servant. I thought it would be hot as heck to have an undressed girl in the apartment following my every command. In the end though, it just felt awful. Instead of suck my fricking member, B-word, it was suck my member now, if you want to. Please? Easy, milk or pain stuff. I went through a bad breakup, went to pick myself up via sleeping around. Slept with a recently ex-pregnant girl who was into pain and leather and other stuff. That crap hurt and I was uncomfortable, and don't get me started on the milk, disgusting, and it got all over. Had a long cry after that one, I still gag when I think about it. I thought I was bi until I sucked a member and now I'm gay. Anime body pillow doesn't feel real enough. Who would have thought that? I thought I would like female domination, so my girlfriend tied me up and just started beating the crap out of me. She hit my wang with a whip and it started bleeding so bad I had to go to the emergency room. You can imagine how awkward that was. Not sure if this qualifies as a kink, but like many people I thought that bigger was better in the eggplant department. Then I slept with a few people who had big ones. 1. Ow. 2. Fricking ow. No thanks, not into it. Now I'm with a guy who fits me perfectly, in a physical sense, although we're compatible in other ways too, and doing the deed with them is the best. Not too big, not too small, just right. 15 years of marriage and I tell my silly husband he too has the perfect eggplant, and he still denies the compliment. Average-sized eggplant is the best eggplant. Period. I really thought I was into having someone pee on my face. Unfortunately, the angle was wrong and it went up my nose. Burned like heck and tasted awful. I'm really not into that anymore. Does anyone else here have an incredibly boring bedroom life and is just reading and listening to the responses for fun? I've had several times I'm so turned on I want to splooge and eat my own splooge. But once I actually get off, that desire disappears instantly. Once I tried it out of curiosity and a simple lick was enough to verify that it's not for me. I was in my early 20s and I thought I was into some more advanced stuff. I took to the internet and found a D couple through AFF who wanted a third, who was also a dom. I was feeling adventurous, so I agreed to play. I'd only had some vanilla stuff before, so what started happening was blowing my innocent mind. First off, this was a very attractive couple. The wife was hot. She started by laying across my lap with her butt in the air. I was whacking her butt. I'd never done this before. I just had no idea what I was doing. Then he put a leash on her and she's crawling to the back room on hands and knees. We get there and she crawls up onto the bench thing and he restrains her at the wrists and ankles. He brings out some floggers and he's showing me how to flog his wife. This is all super crazy and intense. He ends up aggressively doing it with her with my eggplant in her mouth. I'm 10-ply down there because I'm so nervous. He ends up finishing on their bed.
It was a little awkward, but all in all, an eye-opening experience. Turns out I enjoy some ropes and a little bit of rough play, but I'm not much of an aggressive dom. I had a massive public but discreet thing as a teenager. My first real girlfriend and I couldn't really get alone time to do the deed because her mum was homophobic and hated that I was making her daughter gay or whatever. So it kind of worked out that we had to do the deed in public places. We went on a date to the mall together and she tried to get me to go down on her in the family bathroom. I was too anxious and people kept knocking really hard on the door. When we came out, there was like a line of people going around the corner. Didn't realize it was fricking Black Friday. We pretended like I was sick and had been throwing up in there. I was 16 and my anxiety disorder was much more intense, so it wasn't far from the truth. But gosh darn, never again. An entire crowd of judgmental, teed-off people staring at you will kill a kink for good. What's the scariest glitch in the Matrix you've experienced? So I was in a friend's apartment with a bunch of people just hanging out. Eventually, I ended up on the floor sitting due to a lack of seats. Then it hit me. That feeling of déjà vu. You know, where you lose your entire train of thought and try to make sense of what's going on? After a couple of seconds, it hits again, except I remember experiencing déjà vu. At this point, I stand up and start walking around frantically. I reach one of the doorways and there I remember a specific person came up and asked if I was okay, and I shrugged the whole thing off. A couple of seconds later, that person came up again and said the same thing, word for word, and I freaked out even more. In conclusion, I think I had a stroke. Went to sleep at 10 p.m, woke up at 9 p.m. on the same day. I still don't understand.
You were asleep on an airplane traveling west.
Maybe the clock was wrong or daylight saving time confused you and you didn't sleep for more than a few minutes. I was at a camp in the deep wilderness. Nearest cell service was 40 miles away. Only me and my wife. She was in the cabin. I walked out to the porch and down the stairs at night. I heard someone call my name in the direction I was walking. I turned right around and noped back into the cabin without missing a step.
Obligatory Goatman reference.
I woke up with 3 shirts on and 5 pairs of underwear. I was like 8 and thought the boogie monster did it. Scarred me for life. I was completely convinced that my family had told me that my uncle died. I even bummed out about it and talked to people about it at work. Then 2 weeks later, my sister brought him up and I said, "Wait, he's dead, what are you talking about?" And realized that my brain had just fabricated all of the memories. Or I'd had a dream so realistic I'd assimilated it as real memories. Very spooky. Yup, in stressy times, I'm particularly prone to really vivid dreams about unpleasant life events, both remembered from the past and imagined. In some cases, I haven't realized these events weren't current or real for a day or so. Moments before a bomb exploded behind my tank, I distinctly heard my TC, or tank commander, tell me to speed up, motherfricker. I accelerated and he began yelling at me, "Did I tell you to go faster, you dumb Boom! No one else heard him tell me to accelerate except for me. To be fair, this was late at night in 100-degree heat in a reclined position. I could have been driving in my sleep.
So it was a good thing. Like if you didn't speed up, it could have hit you instead of being behind you.
Poor as frick and living in a dreadful flat with my best friend. We scraped enough together for a 6-pack on a Sunday night. Monday morning there were 6 empty stubbies on the coffee table and 1 beer still in the fridge. We kept that magic beer for a while because it was magic, and then I forgot it was magic and drank it.
I can hear that conversation. "Hey man, where's the beer?"
"What beer?"
"The one in the fridge."
"Oh yeah, I drank it."
"You drank the magic beer?"
"Oh, frick."
And then a somber moment and reflection. But it's okay, because that means he becomes magic.
When I was about 8, I saw my mum walk into my room. I followed her because I was looking for her. When I entered my room, no one was in there. I then found her in the living room, which was all the way at the other end of the house. That was not your mom.
Yep, she's usually walking into my bedroom. At work, bored as heck, checked my contacts for someone to talk to. Scrolling down and I noticed a high school girlfriend's name who I lost touch with for a couple of years. I mean, no phone calls, no discussions or common things with friends about her, nothing. The very moment I saw her phone number, boom, she rang. Not necessarily the creepiest story here, weird enough though. Sometimes I'm convinced that I can sense when my phone is about to go off. Sometimes I even know who is going to be the one texting me. I have no explanation and could never prove it. But like, I'll have not texted someone all day, and then I'll put my phone out of my pocket to see what our last text was, and they'll text me the second I swipe to unlock my phone. For a couple of good months, many times a week, my best friend and I would text each other at exactly the same instant.
Sometimes I wonder if the human body can somehow sense incoming texts or calls, the same way certain computer speakers will buzz for 4 or 5 seconds before my phone notifies me of a text. I saw my female doppelganger once. We were walking past each other in a train station. We both turned around to look at the other person after we'd passed each other, jerked our heads and scrunched our faces like, "Do I know you?" Gave a surprised, wide-eyed look like, "That was pretty weird," then another slightly more exaggerated, "That was even weirder," followed by an audible in unison, "What the frick?" and nervous laughter, followed by a quick turn around and hurry away, and one last, "What the frick was that?" look back as we scurried away. If a bystander saw it, they would have thought it was scripted. Weird stuff, man. You were near a mirror? I saw my doppelganger once and it scared the crap out of me. He was on another team in the basketball tournament I was in, but he was a bit taller and more muscular than me. He looked so much like me that my teammates got scared and wouldn't look at him because it creeped them out so much. I swear I was looking at myself. I have dreams that are more abstract to me than normal, where something happens and I can't remember any of it. Weeks or sometimes months later, the exact situation happens that I dreamed about, and all the details came rushing back. It's like déjà vu, but I know I dreamed the exact situation. I just hadn't met the people or been to the place yet. This has happened many times as far back as I can remember. I've had the same exact day twice. They weren't dreams.
Was it a day doing nothing but browsing Reddit? Because that happens to me too.
A friend of mine got extremely high and went to get pizza. The guy knew he was on something and said,
"What did you just come back for?"
And my friend thought he was losing his mind.
One time I was really high and I was buying a movie ticket. The guy must have known I was high because when I asked for my ticket, he responded with,
"All right, sir, will that be for here or to go?"
That confused me so much for a moment. I actually thought I was ordering food. All I could say was, for here? And get the frick away from that guy.
Now I wonder how many high individuals I served in my fast food days and how many people I missed the opportunity to mess with. Laying on my bed with the door open, I hear something moving in the house. I was alone and get nervous. I stare at the end of the hallways, but then my dog ambles across going to another room. The sound was just him scratching. I watch him go into the other room and lay down. I think nothing of it and go back to Redditing. I glance up 3 seconds later and he's walking down the hallway again from where he originated. Not where he'd laid down, like he teleported back to a spawn and walked back there again. Needless to say, I lost my crap. I'd just come back from a 15-hour shift. It was 10 p.m. I haven't worked a double in a while, so I was very tired. I was on the 91 freeway in California at the Atlantic Avenue exit before the 710 freeway. I was fighting sleeplessness a few minutes ago and told myself I can stay awake. My exit home is only a few more miles. I dozed off. My internal clock kicked in and I whipped my head back to wake myself up. What I saw more than shocked me. I was sitting in the car garage. I looked at the clock and about 15 minutes had passed. So I'd dozed off for 15 minutes, although it felt like no more than 1 second. I'd managed to drive in my sleepy state 3 to 4 miles, off the exit, 2 lights, punched in the code to open the public garage, parked my car and woke myself up. I got out of the car and looked around, making sure I didn't run anyone over. Yep, no blood, no brains, no evidence of body tissues. I followed the news in my area for a few days and there were no fatal hit and runs. When I was a kid, I would always have the same recurring nightmare at my grandpa's house. The dream was always about a man accidentally catching himself on fire and burning to death. A couple of months ago, I found out that a man recklessly caught himself on fire while he was building my grandfather's house. My grandpa even put out the fire and held the guy before he died. Fricking mind frick. The closest thing that makes me think that ghosts are real. You probably heard that somewhere and you weren't paying attention to it, but your subconscious definitely was. This happened about 2 weeks ago. It was hot and there was a storm approaching, so I decided I'd jump in the pool real quick and be out before the hail started. After about a minute in the water, I looked up to check and see 2 eagles just floating there, not moving at all. Like time stopped. I'm sure they were just riding the current, but they didn't even sway a bit. Not left, not right, not up or down. Nothing. I was like, frick it. I dived underwater for a while, and when I came back up, they were in another part of the sky, again not moving. They're catching updrafts before the storm due to the gust front. When a storm comes in, birds like to ride the updrafts because they don't use much of their own energy, but they're able to get high as frick. In Missouri, there's a lot of Native American folklore surrounding thunderbirds, which precede thunderstorms and bring rain, and are a symbol of fertility. Nah, those are just the NSA's freedom drones. 2 days ago, I grab a Calvin and Hobbes book while searching for pregnancy books for my manager, whose wife is pregnant. I haven't touched this book in years. I open it up and I find an old birthday card from my wife saying, "I hope you have a wonderful weekend." She died 2.5 years ago. Today is my birthday. I flipped a coin, a quarter or a nickel, and it landed on its side. It was for pizza or wings for dinner. So my dad and I just noped and got Chinese. The correct response was to get both. I dropped a nickel once and had it land exactly on its side like that, no bouncing or rolling, just a thud as it hit the floor. Wouldn't be weird except we were visiting Monticello at the time, which is the building on the back of the coin. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was at a bar once and I saw someone walk up the stairs with a similar haircut and glasses and thought, there I am walking up the stairs. It was really weird. I actually thought I was watching myself walk up the stairs. I was a little shocked by this and mentioned it to my friend and a girl next to me, who said, "That's happened to me before. I've never told anyone." She told me how she was watching out of a train window while leaving a station, and she saw someone running for the train and said to herself, "Oh look, I'm running down the platform." I was running to catch a football in elementary school and it was super far away. The next thing I remember is me having the ball in my hand and everyone just donning a shocked expression. I asked them how the heck I got there and they had no clue. It was messed up to say the least. I thought I was Neo for a good while. I mean, this is a 9-year-old story. I wonder if this guy ever became NFL Jesus or not since then. Similar, but playing rounders, baseballish game in the UK. I'm not the sporty type and that lesson was the worst in school, so they stuck me on 4th base, the last one. Anyway, the ball-throwing person threw the ball, the bat-having person whacked the ball was headed toward me, but off to the right. My right arm shoots out while the rest of my body maintains its "this lesson sucks" stance. Catches the ball, the bat person is out. Yay? I suppose. I wasn't even slightly paying attention to the game, and I'm left-handed. I guess my right arm is just a natural sports limb and decided it wanted its moment to shine. Poor thing. In conclusion, girl hit ball with a bat, I was over there daydreaming about God knows what, my right arm shoots out of its own accord and catches the lass out. End of story. I started that app Tinder recently, and I was chatting with one of the first girls I matched with. I asked her about a tattoo on her arm that I saw in one of her photos. It looked to me like a flaming top hat, so I jokingly asked if that's what it actually was. A few hours later, I was sitting in my bed reading the book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, when I see a phone notification. She had responded, "Oh no, it's actually a bowler hat and arms. The artwork from my favorite book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. I have a date with her next week. I don't know if or when to bring it up. Did I just meet my future wife or something?" My grandmother passed when I was young, maybe 8. When I was around 16, I had a dream that I was hanging out with her and talking and catching up. She stood up in the dream to leave and I begged her not to go, and asked her when I could see her again. She said nothing, but pointed to a calendar that had a date circled. I remember the date when I woke up. It was several months in the future and told my mum about the dream, as she was always interested in that kind of stuff. Several months go by, and the date in the dream is approaching within the next few days. My cousin's husband gets killed in a freak car accident, and my parents fly across the country to be with family. They're gone over the date in the dream, and my mum, being superstitious about the dream, makes me promise not to leave the house that day. I agree, no big deal. My parents are going to be gone, what did I need to leave for? The day in the dream arrives, and my friend calls me up to ride into the city with him. I say no thanks. Later that night, I get a call from him that he was in a bad car accident and his car's totaled. Passenger side all smashed to heck. If I'd been with him. Really weird one. My brother was really sick with a brain tumor and was dying. He had basically been a vegetable for a while and then one day he woke up and was fine. Anyway, he was acting really strange. It was very strange, but I remember him just sitting up like a robot, walking to the bathroom and closing the door. My mum and I were super scared and weirded out by this, so we checked on him and he yelled, "Hey, what is this, a sideshow?" in a really gruff New Yorker accent. The rest of the day was really surreal, and he wasn't him. Then he went back to his vegetative state and died a while later. Anyway, years later I saw a cartoon where someone walks into a bathroom and a fly is on the toilet, and in a gruff New York accent the guy shouts, "What is this, a sideshow?" So creepy. Oh, and I found the cartoon. It was Rocko's Modern Life. I never dreamed about my grandma for some reason, she just wasn't part of my nightly cast. Ever. But one night a few years ago, I had this dream that my family, including her, came to visit me at my college. In my dream, my university was in the middle of Disneyland. I've had recurring dreams about depressing theme parks since I was little, and in the middle of my university was a hospital. While I was showing my family around, we neared the hospital. Suddenly, all we could see were maimed, burned, and dismembered bodies lying around screaming for help and bleeding to death, like some graphic war movie. It was terrifying, and suddenly my grandma had a heart attack from the sheer horror of it all. She was immediately admitted to the hospital ahead of the dismembered people for some reason, and soon after, died. I woke up physically shaken and unnerved. 2 hours later, I got a call from my mum saying that my grandma was admitted to hospital due to a heart condition. She died 3 days later, never having recovered. I wasn't the same for weeks, and this wasn't the only time this has happened. This probably won't be believed, not because it's super fantastic or anything, but it was an interesting occurrence for me. I just finished my last class of the day at university, and I went to grab a sandwich from a sandwich shop. While in line, I had a strange feeling, and basically a voice in my head saying, "Buy a second sandwich, buy a second sandwich." I had this odd feeling I was going to need this second sandwich. I felt really strange about it, but for some reason I decided to follow my instincts and buy it. So I ate one of the 2 sandwiches I'd purchased, then I exited the building. It was a sandwich shop inside of a large building of classrooms on campus, so I could walk to my car. As I'm walking along the street to the parking garage, I have to pass a bus stop. At the bus stop, there's just this one guy hanging out there. He's most likely one of the homeless or poor people that are often around school. It wasn't that unusual, really. As I'm walking by, the guy looks me straight in the eyes and asks, "Hey, is there any way I could have that sandwich?" I was a little stunned, but at the time, I felt like I'd been prepared for the situation somehow. I almost immediately handed the sandwich to the guy and said, yeah, it's all yours," and the guy was extremely thankful. I then just walked to my car. I guess it's just a law of large numbers kind of thing, but it was a very odd experience. If I'd had any other reason for buying 2 sandwiches, I probably would have just chalked it up to random chance or gluttony or feeling generous. But I distinctly recall the weird, uncomfortable feeling of kind of being told to purchase a second sandwich for some unknown reason, and thinking I was losing my mind from too much stress or a long day at school. And then it was just too perfect. The guy just seemed to be waiting there for me to somehow deliver the sandwich. Maybe he was meditating on getting a sandwich, and we're all sort of connected on some kind of universal thought network, and his thoughts happened to affect mine. I guess that's only my semi-functional theory. Anyway, kind of a cool story in some ways. One of the tamest stories here, to be sure, but I've definitely had similar moments of unusual resolve and quick decision. Maybe you all have too. Some drunk guy knocked over a firework mortar and sent a ball of glowing ambulance tickets at me. Then everything's kind of a blur. Then I was on the ground, but there wasn't a scratch on me. Not even a bit of pain or blood or anything. I still don't know what the frick happened. I had a weird dream with monsters in my house and stuff. Then I woke up and found a monster sleeping next to me, and I freaked out and screamed. The dream repeated itself, and I woke up again to find the monster next to me. It repeated itself to what seemed like endlessly until I woke up sweaty as frick and found a figure next to me and screamed as loud as I could. But it's my dad. For a second, it looked nothing like my dad. I was at the store when I heard my boyfriend's ringtone on my phone. I went to answer but couldn't find my phone. I'd forgotten it at home because I'd plugged it into the charger. When I got home, I saw a missed call from him at the time where I'd heard the ringtone. Me and my cousins went night fishing on the coast once. During the night, all of the fish get more active and supposedly come closer to the surface because there aren't birds snatching them up, so it's ideal for casting a rod into the waves. Anyway, I'd been on the rods from 6 to 8 p.m. and I was cold and tired, so I switched over with a cousin and tucked myself into the blanket and beach chair thing that we'd bought. It was getting to be dusk now, and I looked out along the beach, and about 300 meters up, I see a lump that looks to be moving its way up from the ocean and along the beach. I pointed out to my cousin, who also noticed it, but it's dark now and very cold, so we couldn't really be bothered investigating. I keep looking back every 10 minutes or so because it's the only thing that's interesting when you're waiting for a fish to hook itself. And sure enough, it is further up the beach each time, slowly crawling. I can see small limbs fluttering and trying to shift its large body forward, and so I assume this is a sea turtle heading into shore to lay eggs. I'm interested in seeing this a little closer, so I walk off toward it with a torch. As I get closer, it stops shuffling, but I can make out its form a lot better. Its domed back and flat limbs are semi-obscured by sand. As I get to 50 meters away, I'm struck by confusion. It no longer resembles a sea turtle, but it turns out to be a piece of driftwood. "What the frick?" I say out loud. I'd watched this thing crawl its way up the beach and distinctly remember seeing sand flick up around it as it crawled. I walked back to our fishing spot and looked back, and sure enough, it has crawled up into the tree line. A couple of bros and I were sleeping in the same bed as we were known to do, with me being on the side against the wall, guy 1 in the middle and guy 2 on the open side of the bed. So we're all like wrestling around and telling scary stories, or whatever the frick teenagers do, and then before we know it, our tired little eyes drift us off into the land of Nod. When we wake up into the morning, I was on the open side of the bed and guy 2 was on the side against the wall. So we'd somehow managed to trade places in the middle of the night with no memory of how. We woke up to guy 1 sitting up, looking at us and loudly saying, "What the frick?" So apparently the vast majority of the people who've read this have never cuddled with their bros before at night. What are you, gay or something? What was the funniest police encounter you've witnessed? I once transported a man who sang ABBA the whole 2-hour drive. I asked if he was on something in case I needed assistance walking him in once we got there. He said, "No, if I have to be punished, so do you." So then we sang ABBA together. It was awful.
Did he know a bunch of songs or even one all the way through? Or was it just like, you can dance, dancing queen, over and over for 2 hours?
One that my dad liked to tell. He was behind a car at a traffic light and noticed that the driver seemed very nervous and kept glancing in the rearview mirror. It was a long light, so he had time to run the plate to check for any abnormalities. Sure enough, the driver had reason to be nervous, as he had stolen a shiny new sports car, and the marked police car behind him seemed to have figured this out. For whatever reason, Dad ended up in a lot of car chases in the 33 years as a cop, and started carrying a helmet to keep from getting banged up as much. When the car came back stolen, he reached over, grabbed his helmet, put it on, and tightened the chin strap. Expecting the guy was now going to run as the lights turned green, he caught the driver looking back at his now crash-helmeted self and gave a huge grin indicating he was ready for an epic car chase. As soon as the lights turned green, the driver went through the light and pulled over before Dad even turned on the lights and siren. When Dad got to the window and asked him why he'd pulled over, the driver said, "Sir, this car isn't mine, and honestly, I was gonna make a run for it, but then I saw you put a helmet on and I knew you meant business." Running a clearly intoxicated woman through SFSTs, or standardized field sobriety testing, I'm trying to check her eyes, which calls for her to keep her head completely still and follow my finger with her eyes only. Every time I move my finger to the side, she just keeps looking at my face. I remind her several times to follow my finger and eventually ask her if she plans on trying at all. She gently touches my cheek and in her slurred, drunken speech says, "How am I supposed to concentrate when you're so fricking handsome?" I was flattered. She later spewed on me at the jail. Ah, boozy and very flattering older ladies. I don't always miss working at bars with people like that, and I'm sure that any number of them could have ended up in a situation like this. The best one I ever had, I remember it was about 10 or 11 at night, not too early but late enough that it was easy to catch speeders on the highway, doing 30 or 40 over the limit. The speed limit was 90 km per hour and this vehicle is off in the distance and I clock him at a zoomy 70 km per hour. I think to myself that the only reason the vehicle is driving slow is due to impairment. I'm figuring an easy impaired charge. After pulling the vehicle over, I approach the driver, shine my light in, and see a very elderly gentleman. He looks at me and said something along the lines of, "Why did you pull me over? I know I wasn't speeding." I told him that I agreed with him, and after getting his license and vehicle registration, I told him I'd pulled him over for going so slowly, and that I worried he was impaired. There were no visible indications or odor of impairment. He let out a big smile and said he hasn't had a drink in over 40 years. Upon asking him why he was driving so slowly, when with very little traffic on the road most vehicles speed, his response was this: "Son, it was my monthly model train meet-up tonight, and it's the one night my wife lets me go out by myself. When you've been married over 50 years, you appreciate the silence and private times. I'm in no rush to get back home." For our American readers, 90 km per hour is approximately 150,000 furlongs per fortnight.
Wow, he probably averaged 40 rods to the hogshead at those speeds.
Damn, that's a breezy 550 half-clops per daisy willow. Almost every time I've ever been pulled over, the cop takes my license and after calling it in, comes back with it and asks me to get out of the car. I get out, stand up, and they say, "Holy crap, I thought 218 centimeters was a typo." Then after some laughing and chatting, they let me go on my way. A couple of times they've even taken my photo selfie style. It's kinda funny, and only the crustiest of the new recruits ends up writing me a ticket. I remember my friend and I were behind these factories that were near his childhood house. We always wanted to go back there and just look around. As we were down there, a cop car rolls up on us and I immediately thought we were going to get in trouble for trespassing. The cop asks my friend what we're doing here and then points to the sign where it said, "No trespassing." I was shocked by my friend's response. He begins to speak Spanish to the cop, telling him we were abiding by the law. He tells the cop in fake broken English, "We no trespassing. We only two people. Sign says no trespassing." I literally had to hold in laughter, but the cop burst out laughing and told us to go home. There's a homeless guy in my city who has a few mental issues. He's typically easy to deal with, so we normally leave him alone. But every now and again he'll do something that warrants an arrest or a trip to the hospital for a mental health evaluation, and when he realizes that he's about to be arrested, the very first thing he does is take off his clothes. This guy is about 5'2" and has absolutely the largest wang that any of us have ever seen. He'll then run into the street and dance with his giant dong flapping all over the place while we try to take him into custody. He will even occasionally drop a dookie during the process. Most of us officers who have some time will do anything to avoid him, or send the rookies to do the duty work. "Ah, meat spinning the first-timers I see. Good work, Corporal." You know what they say, crap flows downhill. My neighbor is a cop and he just told me the story of how he pulled over a lady and her little 3-year-old kid who looked very frightened of him pulling over his mum. Before he could say anything, she said, "Oh honey, don't worry, police officers are our friends. This nice man is supposed to make sure we all follow the rules." Got the lady for 13 over in a pretty empty street, ran her information and was going to give her a ticket, since it was 13 over in a 35. The kid said, "All right," when he started walking to his car. "Wait, I'm having a birthday tomorrow. You don't have to bring anything, I just want all my friends there." Too cute to ticket, and the mum said he could come by. Little man's getting a cool Lego set too. This sounds like the premise of a really adorable family movie. Cop comes to party and falls in love with single mom. Adorable child is what brought them together. I also want to make clear that policing is not an effective way to prevent or reduce crime. Abolition is possible. I wouldn't watch this movie unless it engaged with the cop leaving his job. Not me, but my brother. He was driving our family's 1980s minivan home and was flying down a hill. The cop nabbed him at the bottom and asked him if he knew how fast he was going. The only response he had was, "Well, honestly, officer, the speedometer tops out at 85, so I really have no idea." The officer cracked up, but still gave him a ticket. When I was still in field training, I was doing traffic stops with my field training officer, or FTO. We stopped this one kid who I felt like I'd seen before, but he also happened to have a warrant out. I said, "Hey man, I'm sorry, but it seems you have a warrant and I'm going to have to take you in today. Can you please step out?" He opens the door and glances back at my FTO and hesitated for a second. I saw him target glancing toward the parking lot across the street, so I asked, "You're not going to run on me, right?" And he said, "No ma'am, not from you. I've seen you at the gym." "But you'd run from my sergeant?" "Oh yeah, I've seen him at McDonald's." I couldn't hold it in. Haha. Can't fault the kid's logic, although I have to say that half the people I've seen at the gym can't run for crap either. Gains and cardio together, people. At a previous employer, our main data center was about 10 minutes up the road from the office. Trips between the two were commonplace, we all ran back and forth frequently. This day we were having a connectivity issue to an entire rack of gear, and I was flying over to the data center to troubleshoot. There was construction between the office and DC, and it had been there for weeks by this point. Fines are doubled in construction zones in the state I live in, and I'm usually careful to not speed in them because those tickets are expensive. Because I was mentally reviewing why we were down and in a hurry, I failed to see the motorcycle cop sitting dead center of the construction zone with his radar gun pointed in my direction until I was in third gear and 10 over the posted limit, which was 20 over the construction zone limit. He nailed me and we both knew it. Since I knew he was coming, I just pulled over into the next parking lot and he came in behind me. Damn. 30 over in a construction zone. This is gonna suck. I grabbed my paperwork out of the glove box and waited for him to do his preliminary check before he came over to talk to me. As he walked up, I greeted him by saying, "Hello, officer. I'm a dumbass, aren't I?" He stared at me for a quick second like he was trying to maintain his composure and just couldn't do it. Started chuckling, and then after a couple of seconds he burst into these deep belly laughs. Probably laughed for a good 30 seconds before he responded, "Well, just remember, those are your words and not mine." I admitted to the offense, but asked if he could please get me back on my way quickly because I had this fire going on at work. He was really cool about it. He still wrote me the ticket, but it was for 11 over, and he put the location as an intersection that was past the construction zone. That was about $900 less in fines that I'd be potentially facing, and made it an infraction I could take traffic school for instead of paying the fine. Super awesome guy. In conclusion, sometimes being cooperative and lightening up a not-so-great situation does help. I blew by a cop once, probably doing like 30 miles per hour over the speed limit on a back road. As soon as I blew by him, I knew I was fricked, but it was also hilly road, so I didn't actually see him pull out. But again, I knew that I was done, so I just pulled over and waited. Like 5 minutes later, the cop doles up behind me with his siren and lights on. When he comes up to the window, I just immediately said, "I'm sorry, officer, I was super over the limit there, and that's my fault." And he was just like, "Why did you pull over? You probably could have lost me pretty easily." "Well, I knew I was speeding, and I knew you were going to pull me over, so I figured I'd just make it easier for both of us." Then he told me how I was the only person who'd ever pulled themselves over for him, and to slow down the next time on that road. Thanks, nice cop.
Pro tip: wait until the officer is at your vehicle and asks for a license and registration before you go diving into your glove box. It might look like you're jumping to grab a weapon, and police officers don't like that.
The only time I wasn't asked to get out of my car for a traffic stop was when I did this. I don't know what to think now. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not a cop, but this happened when I was in like 4th or 5th grade as my grandmother was taking me home from school. Grandmother suffered from really bad IBS and was speeding to get home to use the bathroom. The cop pulls us over and makes it to the window, and my grandma says,
"Look, young man, I have bowel problems and I'm rushing home to go to the bathroom,"
and just pulls out and leaves. The cop runs back to his car and speeds to catch up with us, follows us through the next small town to her house. She gets straight out of the car and goes into the house, while the cop keeps saying, "Ma'am, come back here, ma'am, you can't go inside," etc. She totally ignores him. At this point, my grandpa pulls up because someone had called him at his work to tell him a cop was following my grandma through the 2 small towns and that they thought something could be wrong. Grandpa asks what's going on, and the cop starts telling him to go get his wife because she's in a lot of trouble. Grandpa just says, "What did you want her to do, crap in her purse on the side of the road? You need to leave before you embarrass my wife." The cop is flabbergasted and just gets in his car and leaves. Grandpa and I walk in the house, and my grandpa is getting out of the bathroom and says,
"I need to go talk to that young man and get my ticket."
Grandpa tells her, "He was just following you home to make sure you got there safe. Are you feeling okay?" He gives her a kiss and goes back to work. Grandpa was classy, they both were. Miss you, Mormor and Pawpaw.
My uncle got pulled over once for speeding on the I-95. He said, "Oh damn, I got the highway sign confused with the speed limit sign again." The cop laughed and let him go with a warning. This happened a while ago while I was attending EMT training. In order to keep the class from driving us all crazy from boredom, the other students and I would sometimes joke around and pull pranks on each other. One day, as we were all leaving and getting ready to drive away, I had the brilliant idea to roll down my window and pretend to get a call over the radio. After announcing that I was en route to the scene, I grabbed a suction cup adult eggplant toy that I'd hidden, purchased and used specifically for the joke, was destroyed after completion of said joke by the way, and slapped it on the roof of my car like some kind of old-school styled blue light. I then proceeded to scream like an ambulance siren and floor it out of the lot, much to the enjoyment of my classmates. On my way home, I was doing slightly over double the speed limit on a large highway when I saw flashing lights behind me. Being a stupid teenager, I decided to take an exit and then get back on the other side of the highway. I got pulled over, but only then realized that I still had a rubber member sitting nice and tall on the roof of my car. My greatest fears came true when the officer walked up and recognized me from school, as he was the school patrolman. Miraculously, he let me go despite the absurd speeding and possible evading. In conclusion, I was an idiot, my car had a member, and the cop luckily wasn't a member. I wonder if one could potentially get done for indecent exposure while sporting such a hood ornament. Probably not, I suppose, but there are other charges that I might not even know about.
Also, did anyone think that he was a bit defensive about having destroyed and never used that particular adult toy? Just me? My aunt is a police officer. Her favorite story at parties is how she once arrested a nearly undressed man who was running through a busy street. As she likes to put it, the only thing he was wearing was a rubber chicken, and he was wearing it through penetration. One time I was driving and saw a cop, so I rolled all 4 of my windows down at one time because my tint was illegal. The law where I'm from is that it has to let in 50% of the light or more, and mine was only letting in 20. As he got up to my car, he started laughing and told me he liked my effort and only wrote me a warning. My cousin had his windows tinted dark, but not too dark, and got a ticket. He went to court with the documentation of the window tint job, and the judge said he was good to go. Driving home, my cousin got pulled over for the window tint and got another ticket. The cop asked me if I knew why he had pulled me over. I said, "Speeding?" He said, "No, you rolled through a stop sign back there, but now that you mention it, it did take me a while to catch up with you." The cop, my friend in the passenger seat, and myself started laughing as I had this "oh crap" moment. He let me off with a warning. Nice guy. Not a cop, but I made one laugh once when I was a little too drunk and laying on the sidewalk in a bar district. "Son, what exactly do you think you're doing here?" as he taps my shoulder with his boot. "Hopefully I'm reminding you of someone else you like because this was just the worst first impression." He laughed and helped me find some Gatorade and my friends instead of arresting me for public intoxication. So, Officer Brian, if you're out there, things are going much better, and thanks for being cool with me when things were just starting to get better.
100% true story. A few friends and I go out for our buddy's 21st birthday party, and he proceeds to get rickety wrecked. I'm talking like doesn't know his own name wrecked. So we lose him. Josh is gone. The next morning, I get a phone call and it's Josh. Apparently, he had left the bar, wandered for a while, found a construction site, and fallen asleep on a stack of plywood. He was awakened by a nudge to the shoulder, and he jumps up, still kinda drunk, and there's a cop standing beside him. The cop asks him, "Son, what the heck are you doing? It's dangerous to be sleeping out here, especially in this part of town." Josh is standing there in khakis and a button-down shirt, but he's clearly still inebriated. He bends over, picks up the hard hat, puts it on, and says, "I'm just early for work." The cop bursts out laughing and lets him call a friend to pick him up.
Josh sounds hideous.
Oh, I want that to be true. If it is, it's the best drunk story I've ever heard.
I'm not a cop, probably closer to a criminal, but one night about 6 years ago I had a local cop near peeing himself. I was walking home from the pub one night when I decided I'd rather get some snacks and call a taxi. I walk up to a gas and convenience store and open the door. I noticed no one was at the cash register, so figured they were in the bathroom. I grab a sandwich, some chips, and a giant piece of beef jerky and go to the checkout. I call out hello a couple of times and then jumped out of my skin when the alarm starts to go off. I panic and start to run out of the door, and then I stop and grab my food. Then I say to myself, "Wait, I haven't actually done anything." So I pull out my cell phone and call 911. Hello? 911? I think I accidentally broke into the Ultramar. About 10 minutes later, the police show up and cuff me and begin searching the entire area. One cop stayed with me, and I told him I didn't actually do anything, but he just says, well, he'll be the judge of that. When the manager arrives to review the security cameras, well, she shows up and is a total B-word. I don't think she likes being woken up at 3 a.m. Well, the cop comes out of the office, laughing so hard he's crying, uncuffs me and apologizes, then gives me a ride home and a trip to the drive-thru. I was flagged down by a random motorist. I contacted the driver and he advised me there was a gentleman running out into the street and throwing rocks at cars near the water tower. I advised radio and requested county to respond since it would be on a county road. I approached the area and didn't see any pedestrians in the road or anyone throwing rocks. However, I did see a lady parked on the shoulder, making what appeared to be a frantic phone call. I pull up next to her and asked if she'd seen the rock thrower. She advised she did and pointed at another roadway. By the time county shows up, we both proceed in the direction the second motorist advised. The deputy and I make a right turn, and sure enough, there he is, undressed, with his boxers down around his ankles, standing square in the middle of the road. The deputy and I exit our cars and start walking toward the guy. As I'm walking, I notice a pair of blue jeans entangled in a barbed wire fence to my left. It would seem he had attempted to climb the barbed wire fence but got hung up and gave up on the lower half of his Canadian tuxedo. The deputy and I quickly took him into custody and asked him why he was running around the roadway scaring the local citizens. He says, "What would you do if a gay guy gave you a bunch of money?" I had no answer, so I then asked him what he was high on and he explained, "Family issues," and I got a good laugh out of it. My friend of 16 years at the time's dad was a cop. His son is driving downtown Chicago and does a U-turn almost directly in front of a cop. Said cop pulls him over and sees that he has a police organization sticker on his windshield. The cop said, "Who's the cop?" The kid says, "You are, officer." "I meant in your family, idiot." The bud's answer sounds like something I would say in this situation. Funny that family members of cops can also be complete jelly-legged morons when they think they're in trouble with the law. I got pulled over once. The cop came up to the car and saw I had a bag stuffed under my front seat. He said in a really heavy Jersey accent, "What's in the bag?" In my fakest Jersey accent, I said, "Socks, officer. You want to see 'em?" He started laughing so hard he just told me to get out of there. Friend is riding with her sister to a friend's bridal shower. The 5-year-old niece, a total sassy pants, is in the car seat behind her mum. Driver. Police pulls mum over for speeding and asks, "Where are you headed in such a hurry?" The 5-year-old rolls down the window, looks at the cop with her mum's sunglasses on and states, rather loudly, "We were going to my auntie's party. She's getting married and I'm going to be the flower girl," and then rolls that window up like the starlet she is. The cop got the giggles and couldn't ticket her mum because, well, she was obviously just chauffeuring a star. When I was a cop, my partner was giving a man a field sobriety test after the man had wrecked his car. After denying being drunk several times, he said, "Okay, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've had nothing to drink, but I am high as a B-word." We all laughed and he went to jail. Got called to a domestic. A married couple had split, UK, and the husband was living elsewhere. It was a weekend and he'd come to collect his young child to sleep over that night. A childminder was looking after said child while the wife was out at work. The husband was parked on the narrow driveway and the wife arrived. She blocked him out of sheer nastiness. That's when we were called by the husband. The husband knew the law and wanted police to witness that no offense was caused. Husband places young child safely into his car, lovely new BMW estate, whilst childish wife screamed and laughed that he couldn't go anywhere. The husband smiles at us, the 2 officers, and Julie goes rallying across the front garden. I'm talking through 6-foot laurel bushes, across beautiful rose beds, the lot. The wife screamed at us now as the husband had left, wanted us to prosecute the husband for destroying her beautiful garden. We said no, it's his garden too, and no people were injured. How are white people stereotyped in predominantly non-white cultures? My wife from Cameroon was very surprised when she first saw white people that were poor. She didn't think it was possible. However, once I went to visit a market and I heard a guy shout, "White people are rich, but not this one. This white guy is poor." That was probably a clever way to get my attention to sell me something. Maybe as a consequence of being thought of as rich, white people are very important or prestigious. Once we met a cousin of my wife who was bragging that her husband had several cars. My wife replied, "Yeah, well, my husband is white." In Cameroon, most people believe in sorcery. One guy who was apparently knowledgeable about these kinds of things told me sorcery doesn't work on white people. +10 magic defense. Frick yes, hidden racial bonuses for the win. In the mountains of Peru, it's an urban legend of sorts that white people will steal children. So much so that when I'm around a misbehaving child, the mother almost always threatens the child by saying that the gringo, me, will take you away. That's kind of funny. As a white, I hold the stereotype that many South Americans would kidnap me and either sell me for ransom or as part of a substance cartel plot. Back in high school, we had 60% foreigners, Korean or Taiwanese mostly. The funniest thing I've ever been called was a round-eyed burger muncher. The kid was serious too. When I lived in the Middle East, I was told by an Arab friend that she always thought that white people, mainly the women, were very loose with their bedroom morals, and stuck up. It explained a lot of the not-so-nice things some of my classmates said about or to me before they got to know me. "You're not loose and stuck up like the rest of us? I'm so confused." "My grandfather was killed by being a stuck-up loose woman, you insensitive clod." "Oh, that's probably how I'm gonna go too." "We'll just mud wrestle our confusion away, as is the white custom." A lot of my Middle Eastern white friends think that white people only ever eat turkey and mashed potatoes, or meatloaf. Well, to be fair, there are definitely certain gym-goers who would exclusively eat turkey if they could. There are also some Caucasian replies to this statement. "That's ridiculous. We only eat bacon cheeseburgers and fries, of course." "I nominate the milkshake as the official white person drink." I lived in a predominantly Hispanic area, and one thing that was always associated with white people was money. You were a rich white kid no matter how much money your parents had. No matter where you lived or how poor you were a rich white kid.
Hey man, look at Richie Rich White Boy over there, strutting around the Walmart car park, begging for change like he owns the frickin' place. Rich jackass.
Among Dominicans, white people are considered rich and generally friendly. We also think that no crime occurs around white people. It's considered highly respectable for a Dominican woman to have a white man, even if he is a low-life substance dealer. I can honestly say that most Dominican mothers would rather have their daughter date a white substance addict, garbage man, than a rich black doctor. White people are considered so above everyone else in our society. The funny thing is that to outsiders, Dominicans are black. Dominican women in the US want to be as far away from black culture as possible. They think they're white, basically. It's quite funny. When I went to the Dominican in October, they treated us like frickin' royalty. It was ridiculous. Our busboy told me he hated black people, which confused me. I assumed he was talking about Haitians. And all of the women wanted kisses from my blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid. They'd all call him over with Nino Blanco and ask for kisses on the cheek. My wife said,
"Well, at least we know he'll never have a problem with the ladies in the Dominican."
In Zimbabwe, white people are thought to have no knees. This is due to them wearing long trousers and dresses all the times, apparently. It's also, apparently, extremely funny to them.
This is extremely funny.
A real knee slapper, or a long leg slapper as my white brothers would call it. My brother's in jail for being a knee slapper. It's classed as racially aggravated assault. I've been to Liberia a couple of times, and I've picked up that a lot of the people think that the white people are rather ignorant of how the world works. They're very nice and helpful, but they make you feel like a child sometimes. Most of the time you have to rely on actual children to figure out what the heck is going on.
In all fairness, perhaps you should have let them watch out for you, even if it makes you feel like a child, given that you're visiting fricking Liberia.
Quite. The kids who I met there are more mature than a lot of my grown peers in the US. That said, they will kick your skinny white butt in kickball. Holy balls are they good. Stereotypical white statement. I'll use my credit card.
Oh, and do you have any non-dairy creamer?
I used to live in South Korea, and according to my friend, there's a belief amongst a few Asians that white people are less evolved because they have more hair.
I'm a balding white male. Am I evolving? Will I get superpowers?
My chemistry teacher always said, the more hair I lose, the more head I get.
That's actually a brilliant joke. Most kids won't realize the dirtiness of it until they're long gone. Or I need to get my mind out of the gutter.
I've lived in Tokyo most of my adult life. There's a stereotype hierarchy that goes from foreigner, that's the most important, then to the subsets of white, automatically considered a loudmouthed American who only speaks English, or black, automatically considered a hip-hop gangster who only speaks parody MTV English, or Asian. Yes, that's a stereotype in Japan. You'll be considered a dirty, poor Asian. I'm a musician, and unfortunately my appearance means I fall into a further subset. Dangerous foreigner, probably a drug dealer. Because in Japan, everyone assumes most crime is by foreigners. Actually, crime by foreigners is proportionately much lower. So I get stopped by police all the time. I should add, just as being a black guy in a nice suit getting a coffee in Manhattan is a very different experience from being black with sagging pants and walking into a truck stop in Alabama, so Japan has a wide range of contexts which will affect your treatment here. My friend from Vietnam always talks about white people being crazy. He'd say if a black or Asian guy wants to kill you, he'll just shoot you. But if a white person wants you dead, he will eat you and commit the unspeakable act on your family.
Well, to be fair, in Vietnam, it's not hard to see where this one came from.
White people dance with their elbows instead of their hips.
False. I do not dance at all. In your face.
Then you ain't no friend of mine. White guy here, but when living near the border, I had 3 different Mexican guy friends tell me on 3 separate occasions that white women are freaks, i.e. promiscuous and adventurous to the point of intimidating. Apparently, I've been hanging around the wrong white women.
Nah, you just haven't been hanging around enough Latina women. White women are freaks in comparison, going by general cultural tendencies.
Oh, I know, the Mexican girls had flirting perfected beyond all comprehension, but from what I could tell, that's as far as it goes. See Pierce Brosnan's quote as Julian in The Matador. After flirting with some Mexican schoolgirls, he says, "I hate these Catholic countries. It's all blushy and no," redacted by the narrator of this video. Where I grew up, the word for white man was mzungu. Came from the word kuzunguka. It means to walk around in circles. In my opinion, this is a good basis for what they thought of white people. They sell shirts with Mzungu written on them in Kenya, presumably to tourists. My white father bought one because he thought it was humorous to have a shirt with "white guy" written on it. Did you grow up in Zambia? I was there this past summer, and wherever I went, people would point and yell Mzungu. Note to self, if ever in Africa and people yell Mzungu, start walking around in circles and observe reaction. I have one of those shirts. I bought it in Uganda and it says, "My name is not Mzungu." I heard that word so many times in those 2 weeks that when I finally saw the shirt, I just laughed and threw copious amounts of money at the lady. They knew how to work the tourists, haha. I mean, it sounds like it would get you laughed at in the country for wearing it, but if you don't mind, great. Also, I hope you wore it back home just to confuse people. In Western China, where seeing a white person is so rare that people would stop dead when they saw me, stare, and often pull out a camera to snap some pictures of or with me, white people are considered beautiful, fashionable, sometimes ignorant, and a little sneaky. They assume we all speak English. Most people assume that I was British, I'm American, because I'm skinny. In fact, I had people ask me, after finding out that I'm from the US, "Why are you not fat?" I didn't talk a lot of politics with everyone, kind of a touchy subject in China, but I talked about it with the family I was living with. They thought that Americans were warmongers. They thought it has been too long since we had a real war on our soil and we've forgotten what it's like. We go into war to try and help people, but their opinion is that war helps no one. Some Koreans jokingly think that a lot of white American people greet each other with, "Yo, what's up, man?" with the hand grab chest bump. Every male I know under age 22 does this regardless of race. Male under the age of 22 here, hand grab chest bump overcomes all barriers. As a Chinese person who mainly grew up in the United States, I don't know much about how whites are stereotyped in China, but my parents do. Essentially, in China, people have a love-hate relationship with white people, wanting to be like whites, which is mainly just Westerner. They want to be this way because of the power and status it represents, but at the same time are resentful of that power and status. By the way, in Cantonese, a slang term for blacks literally translates to fermented soybean, because of the black color of fermented soybeans. People will fall head over heels around a white person to the point where they'll just hire random white people to attend important parties or become spokespeople for their products. Contrast that with the disdain that they have for Chinese that come from America. My mum once said that if you, as a Chinese American, ever want to go back to China, that you'll get better waiter service if you bring along a white friend wearing a business suit. Sad, but true. There was an Economist article a while ago that talked about how Chinese were crisscrossing Europe to buy a lot of Western goods because it was a symbol of status in society that you could afford to buy those things. Many Chinese, likely due to a lack of education and exposure, are what I'd like to call extreme passive racists. This means that they have very stereotypical views of other ethnic groups, but they don't plan on taking action on those beliefs anytime soon. I'm sure it's like this for many other cultures as well. So you're saying that if I moved to China and bought all my suits, I could do well for myself without a full-time job? I'd schmooze and eat for a living if that was an option. Yes, in fact, there's a lot of people whose full-time job it is simply to be white and wear a business suit as part of a group of people in China. Now we know what Barney Stinson's job is. Ha! Please. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I went to Nepal last year and apparently they believe white people never work. I was helping build playground equipment and crowds of people would show up to watch. They would gawk for hours. It weirded me out and this is what I was told when I asked. When I was in Nepal, some kids bathing in the local river yelled, "You're American, you eat cats." I thought it was hilarious. My Asian friend told me that all of her friends always felt that the white people they'd encountered smelt like milk, all the time. I've heard this too, and it makes sense. People tend to give off odors based on their diets. Only white people drink so much milk and cheese. Most of the rest of the world is lactose intolerant. Washichu, he who takes the best meat for himself. I'm a white guy who lived on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation for a few months. I always thought that Washichu was the only slur I've ever been called that actually bothered me. A young Oglala told me it means takers of the fat, for white people killing buffalo and only taking the fat. The best part. We had a little joke or pun at meals. Who took the last piece of fry bread? Washichu? Other stereotypes held by some Oglala were that we're all incredibly hairy, which we pretty much are compared to most Native Americans, and that we're all uncircumcised. I still don't really understand the uncircumcised thing, but I saw that a lot in graffiti. In Gambia, we think you're really nice. Seriously. I live in Bangkok, and here, white people are seen as rich, culturally disrespectful, and for the men, specifically, randy deviants. Also completely unable to eat spicy food. There's a few stereotypes I grew up hearing about in an immigrant mixed race, South Asian and African, family in the West. These mostly seem to be about middle-class white people. Note, I'm simply reporting these, I don't agree with them. I'm writing them as if my grandparents are saying them. For example, white people don't love their kids as much because they kick them out when they're 18 and don't support them after that. Also, white people are not as educationally driven when it comes to their children. For example, they won't work long hours in a multitude of jobs and save pennies to send them to the best schools and hire extra tutors and focus on their kids winning maths championships and stuff. The exception to this is Jewish people who are very admirable. White kids, in turn, put their parents in nursing homes as soon as they're able, which is unacceptable. White people are all into artsy-fartsy things like liberal arts and art school and painting that don't get you anywhere. They don't realize that the only worthwhile paths are medicine, law, engineering, pharmacy, sciences, accountancy, and business. White people eat really bland food, like they eat things like chicken, cooked only in salt and pepper, and carrots in strange creamy sauces. White people like to go to India, Africa, etc. to discover themselves, which is hilarious because then they start wearing saris and things and thinking that if you use curry powder, you've made a curry, and attributing erroneous spiritual wisdom to ethnic people. White people are not as clean. For example, white people will put on clean clothes on an unbathed body in the morning, and they only use toilet paper in the bathroom, as in they only use toilet paper and not water to clean their butts. Also, they wear shoes in the house and own a lot of cats which walk on their kitchen benches. White people are more random about doing the deed, specifically white women. If you take them to a fancy restaurant and give them a rose and chat about poetry, they will sleep with you. Disturbingly, this is according to my grandfather. That's apparently all it takes. Some white people smoke green herb with their kids. White people drink a lot, especially white women who often inexplicably consume wine alone. White people are obsessed with wine. Oh, and one more. White people are too gentle with their kids and don't discipline them properly. See also Russell Peters. Wow, some of these, I won't say white people, but they're accurate to Western culture. Wine, for instance. The first one is funny because in the States at least, the best thing you can do for your kid is make sure they're independent. Americans thrive on the idea of independence. Funny that, to other people, that means you love them less. Out here, we'd find someone weird for living too long with their parents, psychologically weak and codependent. Well, that last one was a real bundle of opinions. Gotta say, this whole thread has been really educational. And no, I won't be doing the accents for some of these cultures, for hopefully very obvious reasons. The stereotype of whites amongst South Asians is that white people can't manage their finances properly, and that they are, in a selfish sense, self-concerned rather than being considerate about others. In that parents kick out kids at 18, and kids throw their parents into old homes, all because they're self-concerned and only care about their own lives. Also, that they can't plan for the future, part of why they're poor with finances. Also, white people, particularly Americans, are scared of everything. Seatbelts, pollution, terror attacks, etc. And by that I mean to an unhealthy level of scared of stuff in their minds. That's generally the stereotype anyway. I've later updated this to address people rightfully bringing up my calling Asians inconsiderate. Keep in mind, the thing of most importance to South Asians is family, and it's family and social circles that they feel deserve the most attention. Given the highly populated natures of these countries and the laissez-faire styled capitalism society, one quickly realizes that being considerate to everybody is shooting yourself in the foot, unless everybody else is also considerate, which is rare. Thus, this consideration is limited to your family and friends. It's not as extreme in South Asia, in that they're willing to help a random stranger if it isn't detrimental to them, but the further extreme in an even more populous country such as China can be seen with the toddler and van accident. So I'm just giving that perspective where they're perplexed by why white people don't have any consideration of the ones they love, family. And you dolts, I don't mean that whites are literally afraid of seatbelts, rather the wearing of seatbelts from fear.
I'm also South Asian, and I think that most of the stereotypes I've heard come from the fact that South Asians, and most Asians for that matter, are very collectivist, while America is becoming more and more individualistic. Therefore, people assume Americans don't care for anyone but themselves and have no respect for family. As someone mentioned, putting your parents in an old folks' home rather than caring for them personally. And have no culture as a byproduct of not having any traditions or community. Interestingly enough, I know many people in my parents' generation who emigrated to the US, who abhor the idea of their children, in my generation, taking care of them in their old age. They like the idea of being independent and have no desire to do the work that generally goes along with staying with your kids, like looking after your grandchildren all day. As a Caucasian who lived in China and other parts of Asia for some years, I'm generalizing a couple of stereotypes I came across. Not everybody has them, of course. White people are all from the US. I'm not, by the way, and can all speak English. White people all have money. White people have more beautiful skin and eyes. White people who marry a local and have a kid will have a very smart child, because it's mixed. White people cannot understand Chinese, so it's fine to talk about them openly even when they're 1 meter away, never mind if they understand every word. Many white people have a more open attitude towards relationships. White people can be more rude, but that's mostly okay because they don't know better. As a pink, white, in China, I've pretty much never encountered hatred or open attacks. The racism, for better or worse, slightly favors white, which I suppose has to do with the average income of foreigners there. Chinese have a lot of whitening products advertised, which I suppose may have to do with certain lower status jobs like field workers having more exposure to sun. Hence, they're darker. However, my views are filtered from the racism I as a white encountered. In other words, there may be a lot of stereotypes I've never heard of because nobody told me, or because of the language barrier. I speak a bit, but wouldn't understand everything. All in all, Chinese were incredibly open and friendly, including being openly outspoken about race. Note that the stereotypes some Westerners I talked to had about Chinese were much more brutal than this. They're like ants, uncreative, can't be trusted, etc. were some of the bad racist highlights I encountered. Also note that the stereotypes of Chinese in relation to blacks are worse too. Talking about race, I've asked a couple of Chinese, what would your parents say if you dated a black guy? And the answer was often that the parents would be strictly against this. As a final note, let's repeat. Above stereotypes are not held by all Chinese. Maybe not even the majority. Maybe they're only a minority. They're just some vocal patterns that I ran into. In my family, I was always told by my parents that white people were lazy, never put value on education, and had no culture of their own. It's obviously not my own opinion. Chinese here. My parents think that white people are all divorced. I'm surprised this hasn't already come up. When I lived in the Bay Area in San Francisco for about half a year, any of my friends that were Chinese or Korean thought that all white people never took their shoes off. I was constantly reminded to take my shoes off when entering their houses because they thought we all just walk around the house dragging dirt everywhere. Chinese in China view white people with fascination and curiosity, like they're aliens from the planet Caucasoid. They generally don't have strong negative opinions of white people. However, Chinese expatriates living in the Western world think most white people are extremely selfish and completely tactless. Many are also seen as outwardly polite but inwardly racist to some degree. Some, not all white people, are seen as excessively aggressive and have very incurable alpha male syndrome. They seem to be poor problem solvers, only able to plan 1 or 2 steps ahead. They don't like to think unless they have to. They can be very attractive but age very quickly and seem to gain weight easily, especially the women. They're thin-skinned. And in negotiations, dealing with them bluntly and directly is the preferred approach over diplomatic and passive-aggressive methods. Also, never let white people borrow anything for very long, because after a while, they'll consider it theirs and won't return it. I lived in South America for 9 years, and the predominant stereotype is that white people are rich, entitled, and immoral. White women are seen as easy. The former comes from nearly a century of abuse from the US government and corporations, particularly the latter. US tourists most certainly do not help alleviate this. The latter comes from adult flicks. As a white guy, I ran into a lot of prejudice until people realized I was far more South American than American culturally, and spoke perfect Spanish. These feelings mostly manifested in me getting charged roughly 10 times the cost a local would, whenever I went anywhere or bought something. Until I began to haggle in Spanish and they realized they'd made a mistake in judging me. I wanted to offer my own experiences and noticed most of the comments up top refer to Asian stereotypes. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications.
Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.